All right, so today I have the pleasure of being joined by my cousin, Finn Kelley, big time baseball enthusiast, big time Boston sports fan. He is a double Husky, has 2 degrees from Northeastern. In the background there, you see Fenway Park up at the top of the screen. He graduated from Northeastern and had the honor of walking at Fenway Park twice in Northeastern's graduation ceremonies. Finn, an absolute pleasure to have you on the podcast today to talk about the Red Sox. Thank you for your time. How you doing today?
Joey, I'm doing great. I'm super excited to be here. An absolute pleasure to share the stage that has been graced by many sports legends. So I'm really happy to be here.
Much appreciated. And you're adding to that sports legends list here, having you on today. So you're definitely part of that group there. Thank you for your time. As I said, we'll start off with the Red Sox and what they did in the offseason. Obviously, they were busy. They were not as busy at the start of it, especially in free agency. It really took them time to even get a free agent acquisition, which they ended up getting Ranger Suarez. Of the offseason acquisitions, so Ranger Suarez, Sonny Gray, Willson Contreras, Caleb Durbin, Yohan Oviedo. Which one of those are you most excited to see in a Boston Red Sox uniform?
Yeah, I gotta go with Ranger there. It's nice to see them shell out some money. Maybe the Bregman money was used there, but super excited for Ranger. He's just been consistent in his MLB career. He's not a huge strikeout guy. He's not a big overpower guy, but he just gets the job done. And I think, once you prove that over a certain amount of years, playing somewhere big like Philadelphia, I think it can translate. I love having a veteran presence on top of Sonny. I think it's just two big additions to the starting rotation right at the top. I think that was massive for us. So I'm super excited to see Ranger at Fenway and hopefully just keep him healthy throughout the year and we get to playoff baseball with him.
Yeah, that would be big time having another lefty in the rotation with Crochet. And this Red Sox rotation is pretty deep now, right? You got Crochet, you got Gray, you obviously get Oviedo as well, a guy they got in the trade with Pittsburgh. You add as well Brian Bayo into that mix with Ranger Suarez. This rotation is pretty good. Do you have a number of where you'd put them in baseball as a top three, top five, roughly, where they stand among other teams?
Oh yeah, I like us top three. I think the three best are maybe the Dodgers are in there as well, though. Can't ever count out the Dodgers and all their money. But top five might not even be top one of our division. The Blue Jays are pretty stacked. The Mariners are stacked. I just love those four rotations between us and those three. But I think we've got unbelievable depth. I think the Blue Jays match our depth with going into the sixth and seventh pitcher, but Toll and Early both might start on the outside looking in, but that's unbelievable depth to go to. If someone starts slower, you get an injury. I really like what we built. I think that's really good for playoff baseball.
Yeah, I'm excited to see both those young guys you mentioned, Tolley and Connolly early. I'm not sure, like you said, they might be on the outside looking in for the start of the season in respect to the rotation, but when those two guys get in the mix, and obviously at some point probably be in the starting rotation, whether it's they're starting the bullpen to start off or they start out in AAA, we'll see, what Cora decides to do with those two guys. But there's definitely a lot of promise around those two. And then, like you mentioned, two other great rotations, especially in the AL. The Blue Jays had a lot of success last year with the rotation. Then you look at the Mariners, who have had a strong rotation now 2 or 3 years in a row. There's one rotation I like. I think Detroit's rotation is underrated. You got obviously Scooble. You got Framber Valdez, they add in free agency. Verlander still had some, good production last year. He's now back in Detroit. You got Casey Mize, who I like. Jack Flaherty as well as another, rotation depth guy in that rotation, but still a good pitcher as well who can eat some innings. I like them as well. I think they're underrated. The Dodgers rotation, I think, is probably still the best in my opinion. If you look at top to bottom, and you have Yamamoto with Glasnow and Otani and Blake Snell, it's pretty crazy. And then Sasaki as your fifth, like that's a wild rotation. The Yankees rotation is pretty good too. I mean, you saw Cam Schlittler play at Northeastern, and he's obviously a guy that's on the come up for them and on the rise. What was it like seeing him pitch against the Red Sox in the playoffs? I know obviously you're a Red Sox fan, so you want the Red Sox to win, but as a Northeastern Huskies baseball fan, seeing a guy you saw play in college must at least been somewhat special, even though you want the Red Sox to win.
What an absolute monster. And he really, he pulls on my heartstrings as a Norwood Mustang, seeing a Walpole Rebel tear apart the Boston Red Sox. That hurt. But, you know, putting on for the Northeastern Huskies and just putting us on the map outside of Carlos Pena and a couple other guys, Ottavino, that was special. It was bittersweet, but it was nice. I've never been happy with the Yankees win. That's about as close as I'll ever get. So I was really happy for him. I was happy for Northeastern. I was happy for South Shore baseball, but not for Norwood or the Red Sox. So that was awesome to see Cam. I will say the Yankees rotation, I don't think it stacks up with the rest that we listed there. They do have some good they got some good prospect depth actually with Elmer Rodriguez and Ben Hess, but those guys aren't there yet. They got a decent rotation, but the Sox and the Blue Jays, I think we definitely run the AL. And I might even like the Rays more with a True Rasmussen, an absolute animal.
Yeah, he's really good. He'll choose some innings and obviously get some Ks as well. He's good. I think, like you said with the Yankees, it also depends on like health, right? They've had a lot of injuries the last couple of years to their starting rotation. Garrett Cole obviously being hurt is a concern last year, being out the whole season. Now he's coming back. We'll see what he looks like when he gets into real MLB regular season form and not just spring training. I know he pitched against the Sox this past week, but we'll see what he looks like when opening day does come around in the next week. But their rotation's good. I agree with you though. Depth wise, I think the Red Sox probably better, especially when you consider the two young guys that are right at the cusp. And a lot of teams, Tolley and Connolly early, are probably starting in the rotation, maybe around the fourth or fifth starter. Right now, where the Red Sox stand, they just have so much depth. So we'll see, what the future holds for the Sox rotation. I think midway through the season, you'll see those young guys in there, and I think that's what'll bring us to that next level. Because I think early is
Yeah.
potential X factor. I think he could be a Cy Young winner one day down the line. I see a lot of potential in him, which I know it's high praise and high expectations, but we'll see what we get out of him. As for another offseason addition, they also added Willson Contreras, made a trade with the St. Louis Cardinals. What do you expect from him this season at first base?
I'd just like to see some consistent defense and a decent bat. We don't need him to be the MVP, but we were hurting on that side of the infield, especially first base. The second Casas went down, we just never found the answer. I'd love to just see a consistent bat that can be in the lineup 130 plus games. That would be awesome. Just no questions asked. He can bat anywhere, 3 through 6, wherever you want him. Just get in the lineup and hit the ball, put it in play over the fence. We need a little more dinger power this year. I think Willier can actually bring that if he can get some more full-time at bats. Um, but I'd just like to see some pop in the bat and good defense. We need good defense desperately.
Yeah, yeah, I'd completely agree with you on that. I think it's been a revolving door at first base the last 8 years, right? Since we won that World Series in 2018, it seems like every other year for the most part, there's a new guy at first base. Every other day, at some points, there were new guys at first base, right? We had the year with Franchi Cordero at first base, and we just had so many guys
Bobby
in and
D.
out. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Bobby Dahlbeck, right? You're right. So many guys in and out at first base. So now it'll be hopefully a guy that's there that'll be your mainstay at first base for the season. Do you think the Red Sox are giving up a little bit? Which I know he's hurt, he's coming back from injury, so it wasn't like he'd be ready for opening day. But do you think, as a potential depth piece on the bench, do you think Triston Casas could play a role for the Red Sox at some point this season? Do you think fans have given up on him maybe too early?
I don't think he's given many people a reason to believe, and it's not his own fault. That's a really tough injury. He had started last year slow before the injury. He just doesn't have a lot of games. But I wouldn't say give up on him. He's shown that he has a ton of pop in the bat. He's a disciplined hitter. It wasn't the case last year, but that was a really small sample size. But I like him not having the pressure of a starting spot right now. Just get back from your injury, get fully healthy, get the reps in, get the rust off. I think we got a deep enough team where I like us to be reaching the playoffs, and that's when it matters to heat up. You just got to get hot at the playoffs. If his bat starts turning around late in the year, that's all we need. Just plug him in wherever you need him. Um, I don't think it ever hurts to have depth. And I do prefer having Contreras out there, just having proven MLB player. It's nice to start the year with someone who's got proven MLB games played and position wise played first base for his career. It'll be nice, but I'm excited to see if Cassis can bounce back. It would be nice for him and for Sox fans as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you said it best. I think last year it was a small sample size and, a freak injury, right? You don't really see that, that fluke type of play where you're, running up the first baseline, you rupture, was it his Achilles tendon or something in his knee? Ruptures a tendon in his
Yeah.
knee, obviously, and, missed the rest of the season. He only played in 29 games last year. And I think when we saw consistent at bats in 2024, I know that's 2 years ago now, but you saw a lot of potential, right? 24 home runs that year, 65 runs batted in, and 856 OPS. That following season, heading into 2025, there were people that were thinking he could have been an outside candidate at potentially, I think that's 2023, that big year for him. But the next year or two after that, there were high expectations for him to be that next, cleanup power bat in the Red Sox lineup. Injuries and obviously struggles at the plate were a problem. I think you're right, giving him just maybe time to fully heal, fully recover, and then step back in with less expectations around him. Maybe that'll bring less pressure and he'll be more comfortable at the plate. I know it'll be limited at bats at times, right? And probably be scattered, but that obviously can still get your foot, back, on the field, get back your footing, get, back focused at the plate. I think he can, do that. I haven't given up on him. He's only 26, so, and he's still under team control for another 3 seasons, I believe. So it'd be tough to move on from him and give up right away. With that being said, the Red Sox lineup has a lot of guys we don't know where they're going to, fit. Masataka Yoshida being one. I'm a big fan of Yoshida. Would love to see him in the starting lineup. It seems like right now he's probably on the outside looking in, probably as a bench player to start the season. What do you think about Masa and where he stands in the Red Sox lineup right now?
I think he's a fairly mediocre player, but it's hard to judge these guys when they can't get consistent at bats, and whether that's through injuries or just an overcrowded outfield, it's really hard to break out when you're only playing 90 games as a platoon bat and you can't find that rhythm. So it's really hard to judge these players, and you do feel bad for them. They come in with these massive expectations and they're only given 100 games each. I think the injury, especially to Casas, has forced the management's hand to fill the void. And I think that's actually nice. Get some guys in who are expected to play full-time roles. And if Yoshida and Casas want a spot back, they'll have to earn it. But that'll be good. If they're playing well enough to bench Contreras, then he's absolutely balling out there, and that'll be amazing. If Yoshida's playing good enough to put Abreu to the bench, it means he's raking. So I'm happy with the depth. I think given a chance, Yoshida can be a good MLB hitter. I don't think he's special enough to alter this lineup more than some of the guys we already got. But take some pressure off the prospects and just have a nice depth piece in Yoshida. I don't hate it at all.
Mhm. Yeah, I think with Yoshida especially, I think there are certain situations he can really help this team out, which we saw last year against the Yankees. The Red Sox really struggled, especially against Cam Schlittler, getting just the bat to the ball and putting the ball in play. And that's something Yoshida does really well. Is putting the ball in play. He doesn't swing and miss too much. He's a very disciplined hitter, like Triston Casas, like you already mentioned. Very disciplined at the plate. Yoshida last year didn't play enough games, just like Casas, right? Battling injury, only played 55 games last season. 266 batting average. It took him a while to try to find his footing, which when he got to the playoffs, he was 4 for 7 in that series against the Yankees, which is 571 for batting average. Limited at bats, but still got on base, 4 of 7 times, which is impressive. I think when you look at his advanced numbers, which I'm a big fan of his, so I'm gonna, defend him more than most. He does put the ball in play, and you can see that with his whiff percentage. 15.4% whiff percentage last year, which if he had enough qualified at bats would have been fifth in the MLB, fifth best. And then he had an 11.7% strikeout percentage last year, which once again, if qualified, would have been tied for 11th in the MLB. So very impressive numbers there, I would say. I know at the end of the day, though, this Red Sox team needs more power. He might not bring that to your lineup, but he'll bring, obviously, putting the ball in play, especially in situations where the Red Sox have struggled, especially in situational at bats, guys on second and third, one out. All we need is them to put the ball in play, maybe a sacrifice, a fly out to right field, something like that. And that's been a problem for us the last couple seasons. So we'll see where he stands. Like you said, though, he's another one of those guys where it's tough to really know what the expectations are when you don't really know what they're going to get for at bats. So it's hard to really put a lot of pressure or a lot of predictions on what they're going to do for the team this season. But I think you said it best about Costas as well, right? Like having a smaller role might play to his advantage when he gets back in the lineup. That could be huge. We'll see what happens there. I want to flip now to the Red Sox outfield. Obviously, this is kind of, the storyline when you look at the Red Sox. Everyone will talk about Crochet and obviously the move getting Ranger Suarez. The Red Sox outfield, I think, is probably the best part of this team. You have Jarren Duran, you have Willie Abreu, you got Roman Anthony, you got Cedar Rafaela. Of those players there, I'm sure Roman's probably the guy you're most excited to see in a Sox uniform this season, see what he does in year two. But besides Roman, and obviously talk about Roman as well, but besides Roman, which one of those guys are you most excited to see, at the plate this season for the Sox?
At the plate, I'll say Willier. I think Willier, he he led our team in home runs last year, if I'm not mistaken, and that was partially playing in a platoon almost. He just still has more power in his bat. He is an absolute monster. He's still so young. He's not inexperienced, but he's only got a couple full seasons under his belt. I think he has so much more room to grow. I'd just love to see him get a full season of at bats, and that's hard to ask when that outfield is just such a log jam. And you saw what happened when you move around the positions and take guys out of where they're supposed to play. It's more of a detriment, but I'd love to see him get a full run at the plate. I think he can lead the team in home runs again. He can be pushing 30. He could scrape out a 40, but he absolutely rakes and he's awesome to watch. So he just did it at the World Baseball Classic. He's unbelievable. So I'm a big fan of Willier. I'm super excited to see him this year.
Yeah, he was awesome. Like you said, Venezuela, I mean, he was probably their best player, most consistent, right? Had some big time hits, hit a home run, in the finals against the US. He showed up big in some big time moments there. And he's still young. Like you said, he's only, heading into his third or fourth MLB season now. So there's obviously a lot of room to grow in potential. And now this year, I think he's going to get that opportunity to be, the everyday right fielder for the Sox. Roman Anthony. Another big time bat, a guy that had a lot of success in the World Baseball Classic as well, hit a couple home runs. I think he had 7 RBIs in 7 games, was really strong for the US, in those 7 matches that he played in. What are your expectations for him this season, and what do you think his ceiling can be in the future for the Sox?
I think ceiling, you're looking at he has that ceiling to be one of the top three hitters in the MLB. And you don't want to put that on him for this year in his first full season. But you saw a taste of it last year in the World Baseball Classic. He just hits at that level, and so many MLB players have said it. Maybe the output isn't entirely there yet in home runs and RBIs yet, but the quality of hit, the exit velocity, the whiff rates, the chase rate, all of that is there for an absolute stud. And I don't know when it will come, but someday he will be talked about as a top three hitter or number one hitter in the MLB. Probably the day Shohei and Judge both retire. So
That's high
he,
expectations.
I don't wanna put that on him this year. I think we have a solid lineup, just top to bottom. But I do think he can be our best hitter this year, and he probably will be. I think he's shown it. He struck out to end the World Baseball Classic, but that was a big stage, and he played really well throughout the rest of the tournament. Like to see him go down swinging there. So
Mhm.
yeah, I'm super excited for Roman. Um, he should be in the lineup at all costs as long as he's healthy every game. None of the young guy platoon nonsense that Cora likes to pull out sometimes. Just get him in there and keep him in there all day.
Yeah, he
Let him
needs a
rake.
consistent ABs. He
He
needs a
needs it.
consistent ABs. I'm
He
with you
needs
on
it.
that. I'm with you. And like you said, right, he has the potential to be one of, if not the best hitter in the MLB. I would compare him to Bryce Harper. I think he has that potential to be, which Bryce at times, right, especially when he first got into the major leagues, was, that young star everybody was looking forward to watching and seeing what their career would end up being. I think he's like Bryce in some regards, where he can be that best hitter in baseball. I think his floor, which this is still high expectations, and I don't want to place this on him, but Cody Bellinger, I would say, is his floor, and that's still a very good player. Was an MVP in the NL at one point earlier in his career. Still a very good player now. Just got a big time payday from the Yankees in the offseason at, I think it was around like 35 million a year. So I think it was 35 million, but he's still, no matter what he falls in between there, if he's between Bellinger and Hopper, right? That
Two
would still be
MVPs right
right.
there.
Exactly, right? So that's where I would put him at expectations wise. Like you said, though, and I think you make a great point, and this is something I didn't think of. I don't want to put that expectations on him this season. You don't want to say, hey, here's the reins to our entire team. You got to carry this offense because I think that only puts too much pressure on him. And I think honestly, last year, I think Kristian Campbell, some of his struggles were because we placed a lot of pressure on him to be, okay, you got to be this young guy in the lineup that would get on base, put the ball in play, make the right plays defensively, which he really struggled defensively at second, even in the outfield a little bit as well. I feel like we put too much pressure on him to be that next young stud to really step in day one as a rookie and be that guy we could try to build around. With Anthony, I agree with you. We got to obviously keep expectations high for his future, but for now, lessen them so that when obviously the time comes, 2 or 3 years down the line, he's ready to be, one of the best in the league. You know,
I fully agree with you there. And as much as I love to say that, and we did just say that, it does look like he's already our best hitter. So good luck, Roman.
he's probably the best. I mean, I think Abreu, like you said, power wise, is probably the best raw power. But and Contreras will have some success at Fenway with obviously the Green Monster, I think. But I think power wise, he could be right there. I think
Oh
he
yeah.
only had eight
And
home runs
he's
last year,
already
but
best pure hitter. It's it's a great thing to watch Roman Anthony at bat. And he's a massive individual. That's always a great pairing. When you make good swing decisions with a great swing and you're huge, good things are going to happen.
Mhm. Absolutely. And I'm excited to see what he can do this year. And one guy I just mentioned was Kristian Campbell. Reports came out today, I believe, that he will be starting the season in Worcester. What are your thoughts on that?
I'm happy he's starting in Worcester, and you alluded to it at your last answer. Give him a position and let him stick with it. He was that was absolute malpractice from them last year. His breakout was amazing, and I know he started hot, but his hot start, you could kind of see it was a lot of, poking the ball to the right, not pulling much. And then the wheels fell off and he was bouncing all over the diamond. It was awful. I think they completely mismanaged that. They need to be extra patient with him if they want to be able to recapture that potential. Because right now it doesn't look like it's gone, but he's not knocking on the door like he was last year. And I don't know if a lot of people agree with that, but he's not he's not that same caliber prospect right now. And it's weird to say because it's still the same guy, but he hasn't looked like that prospect since very early on in last year's spring training, I would say. So I want to keep him in Worcester and just let him build up that confidence at a position and at the plate again, and see some base stealing again. I'd just like to see that defensive base stealer with an electric bat. I'd like to see just more of that in Worcester. I think we got a good enough lineup. If he absolutely rakes in Worcester, he can come help for the playoffs if we get injuries, but I don't want to rush him up just because we have an injury disaster. If he's not ready, you got to keep him down there.
Mhm. Yeah, I think you said it best. He needs consistent at bats, and if he's sitting on the Red Sox bench, he's playing one every 3 or 4 Sox games. I don't think that's helping him improve. That's also not helping his stock as a prospect. I know he's no longer a prospect now, right? He's been in the MLB. He's no longer going to be, in a rookie, as a rookie. He's not going to have a rookie status anymore. With that being said, too, I think if he has success in AAA, if the Red Sox feel like they have enough depth on their current team and at the deadline they want to move somebody and he ends up improving his stock as a player, as a young, I guess I prospect's the word you could use still, even though he's no longer a prospect, but you could use that word and say, if he has a big year in AAA, maybe the Red Sox use him as a trade chip at the deadline. He's still young, under team control for a decent amount of years as well. We could see, what happens in that case. Like you said, though, I think the jumping around the diamond was just too much for him. He was struggling at second. Center field, I think he was a little bit better at, but it wasn't by much. So he was struggling there. They had him at first base, in some, games, before the game and practice, having him practice at first base, which was tough. They did that in Worcester as well. I think it was a lot for him. It was a whirlwind of a season where you started the first 2 weeks of the season really hot and really showing a lot of potential. Struggled with strikeouts, struggled defensively, lost all his confidence, went down to Worcester. Still struggled there, but maybe have been a little bit better. He's getting more at bats at least at that point. And then even in spring training this year, he struggled. He hit, I think it was 220 this spring, a home run and 4 RBIs and 41 at bats. That's tough. But like you said, hopefully some at bats, down in Worcester can help him. And would you contemplate trading him at some point? Like I said, if he has a really good year in Worcester and the Red Sox want to use him as a trade chip at the deadline?
Yeah, I would. And that's not to say I don't believe in him at all. He can definitely recapture some of that magic that made him a superstar prospect, but it's clearly not there right now. And now you have, as you just laid out, not the MLB sample size, but the whole season sample size and into the spring training. It's not looking as bright for him in the future where he was once looking like a staple in the lineup. So if the return is good and you have a clear hole to fill coming on the deadline and we're looking like a playoff team, I would be okay with moving him because I'm never against going all in. You can't fault yourself ever for going for it. And I don't think he's going to be a contributor this year, but I'd love to be wrong on that. It would be amazing if he's a contributor this year, but I don't think so. So yeah, I think that could be a great deadline chip, and I think that's the benefit of having brought in some more veterans and holding on to some of your prospects that have blossomed into MLB caliber players, even if they're a depth piece. You have the room to move your prospects. You have a lineup and you can strengthen it with guys who are currently in Worcester.
Mhm. Absolutely. And I think, like you said, best, right? Like his status right now, in respect of where he was like a year ago heading into the season, there was so much hype around him. He's a top 10, top 15 prospect. When he stepped into that lineup day one, all eyes were on him, right? And then when you struggle, obviously his confidence is going down. Other teams' interest maybe in trading for him is going down. So, like you said, I wouldn't trade him right now. First off, because you're not getting, the full dollar amount of what he's worth, especially with how young he is. And the potential is there, even though he's not really putting it all together right now. So I wouldn't even contemplate trading him right now. But if we're in the position in, June and July where we could make a run at it and try to win the AL pennant, you can't let that stop you if that's the difference of, getting that piece you need to try to win a World Series. So we'll see. Like you said, you can't fault the team for going all in. And we do have some other young pieces as well, where we're still trying to figure out what expectations are for certain guys. Marcelo Mayer being another one. What can you expect from him? And the report came out today that he'll be starting at second base for the Red Sox. Could be a platoon situation where he's hitting against left-handed pitching to start out, but we'll see what happens there. But what can the Red Sox expect from him this season?
I, I don't love the young guy platoons we do, but I do love Meyer getting MLB at bats because I think he's an MLB caliber hitter. I don't think he looks overmatched out there as Campbell started to seem overmatched. Um, I think Meyer will be an MLB player and starter, hopefully for the Red Sox for a long time. I think he has that capacity. He's just a great hitter, and he's shown it at every level. He hasn't fully shown it at the MLB, but you can really see the potential there. And he plays good defense. It would be nice if he can just play a good second base. We've just been hurting on finding consistent defensive play at all positions besides wherever Sedan is. So I'd love for him to stick at second base and keep Sedan off of second base because he belongs in the outfield. So I don't think this probably won't be a big breakout year for Meyer, but I think he can contribute and he could certainly be a big piece of the team by the end of the year because he has that potential. It might not come this year, but he does have the potential to break out at any point because he's just a great baseball player.
Mhm. And I think consistency, playing games wise will be important for him, right? He missed
Exactly.
games with injuries. Even when he was in the Red Sox lineup, he wasn't playing every single day. He played in 44 games last season. I just looked it up. 4 home runs, which I think he has more power than that. And there was 4 home runs in 44 games, but I think he has more raw talent and raw power than that. 228 batting average, 10 RBIs. I did mean to say he might get some at bats against right-handed pitching. Obviously, he's a left-handed hitter, so he might be a platoon guy where he'll play against right-handed pitching at second base, and then maybe they go with one of the other guys, IKF or Monasterio for those other at bats against left-handed pitchers. But we'll see what happens there. But as for Meyer though, obviously it was just 4 home runs last year. You expect more power from him. I think you saw that in AAA and in the minors when he was playing, even in high school as well. I think he has more power than people are giving him credit for. I know it was a small sample size last year and only 4 home runs in those limited amount of games, but I think he has more power than that. Would you agree on that?
I think he's got more power, but I think it's going to be correlated to squaring the ball up more. I don't think he was lacking power last year because he wasn't going for home runs. I just think the full contact that he has in him and that he's had at all previous levels wasn't there for the MLB yet. And I think it's mostly related to first sample size in the MLB, rookie, a young rookie, and not getting consistent playing time and battling injuries. So I think if he can find just a consistent spot in the lineup and he's seeing MLB pitching every day or near every day, you'll start to see him square it up more. And as he squares it up, that's where the power will come from. He once he gets a hold of it, the ball will start leaving the park.
Mhm. Absolutely. Yeah, I think we saw that last year in a couple at bats. I think he had a home run at Yankee Stadium last year, and it was a moonshot, if I remember correctly. It was an away team. I think it was Yankee Stadium. And I remember seeing that. And I was like, if he could just get a hold of the ball, like he can hit the ball as far as anybody on the team. Like, he has a lot of power. He's a big kid too. Still young. So, I think the same thing with Campbell and Anthony. We don't want to place too much expectation on these guys. And we saw what happened with Campbell when he had too much expectation placed on him and the pressure was high. I think, like you said as well, I don't love the platoons that Cora does at times. I think getting consistent at bats is important. Where if Meyer ends up living up to the potential where he's supposed to, be a cornerstone for this franchise, getting those at bats against left-handed pitching is going to be important because you're not going to be sitting him in those situations. He's going to be playing all 162 if he's healthy, right? So I think maybe as of now, you had to get back in the form of playing. Major League Baseball every single day is important since he's battled a lot of injuries. It'd be important to get back up to speed, but I don't think those platoons necessarily help him. Would you agree on that? I think getting consistent ABs is going to be important.
I fully agree with you. And I think come playoff time, you don't want to be hiding your best players just because you don't love the pitching handedness. Because playoffs, all those numbers go out the door and you just come down to big moments. Aaron Judge can go 0 for 30 in the playoffs because it's a small sample size. Regardless of it could be his best matchup at pitcher for all 30 at bats. He just strike out each one. It's too small and that's baseball. So got to get Meyer the at bats because you're going to want him playing left-handed pitching in the playoffs and for years to come. So you got to let him see it and gain some confidence. He might do horribly against left-handed pitching, but then he sees enough, or he sees a guy and he sees him again in the playoffs. and he's more ready for it. If his first at bat against a lefty comes in the playoffs, I guarantee it won't go well.
It's a valid point. I'm with you on that. Getting those ABs is going to be, big time for him. And having, the starting nod, I think is good for him too, because there's a huge question mark about second base and third base this offseason. Who's going to be where? Was he going to be at third base? Was he going to be at second? Was he going to be on the bench? There are a lot of questions about that. So I think it's good, obviously, that he now has, a solid spot at second base. As for third base, another young player, Caleb Durbin, a guy the Red Sox acquired in a trade with the Brewers, trading, Kyle Harrison over to Milwaukee. What are your thoughts about Durbin and what are your expectations for him this season as the starting third baseman for the Sox in replacement of Alex Bregman?
Yeah, Durbin, I like him. I think he's a low ceiling kind of guy. He doesn't have ridiculous pop, but he doesn't strike out a bunch, which is nice. And he can put the ball in play. So sort of what you were looking for with Yoshida, but at a position that we had a hole. So I think he can add something to the lineup, lower down the lineup. I don't think he'll be a special bat, and I don't think there's a massive breakout there, but there could be. But at least from what he showed in Milwaukee. I think that's what you can get. I think he is what he put together last year, like around 10 to 15 home runs, and he puts the ball in play and he doesn't strike out a bunch and he can steal a few bases. So I think that's just a good baseball player. And that's what you need in your lineup. And hopefully he can get playing time near every day and just put together that production, keep the ball in play. So yeah, I'm excited. On the other hand, the Harrison trade, Harrison has been dominant this spring training. We could have jumped ship on him early. I know we have the depth in the rotation, and that's great, but maybe you would have been better served holding on to that depth. Mayer at third, someone else at second, Hamilton, even if you have to, and then at the deadline you move Harrison, who maybe he has the breakout with the Red Sox, or maybe not. They fleeced us twice now on a pitcher, so
Yeah.
uh, I don't know, but I don't love the trade knowing how good Harrison's become. Durbin, I think you just have to evaluate him as he is. You shouldn't be comparing him to Harrison. And if he's in our starting lineup, then that's a good trade because I'm not sure Harrison would be in our rotation right now just because of how stacked it is.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. It's an excellent point. I think Harrison might have been in AAA to start the season potentially with the rotation we have, unless he was going to be a bullpen piece. But the Red Sox didn't really ever want to entertain that, especially for the long term. It seems like when he was in the Red Sox, either was he was going to be a starter or not. I think there were talks about him being, a bullpen guy at some point. But I think with his talent and obviously the expectations around him when he was a prospect, he was supposed to be that next, big league, starting pitcher that could be, maybe an ace, but at least a two for a team, right? There were a lot of expectations around him as a prospect. The Red Sox, I do think, gave up on him a little bit too early. Even James Tibbs the third, James Tibbs the third, we traded to the Dodgers, and he was great for them at the end of that season, in AAA or AA, I think it was, for the Dodgers. So it is tough that Devers trade kind of falling apart within a blink. It feels like everyone's gone. Now you look back, and obviously that trade happened. We were together at that time. We were in a Volo Flag Football League. Game was over with, and I remember looking at my phone saying the Red Sox just traded Devers. You're the first person I told because I know you're a big Red Sox fan, and we were both equally shocked. You look back at that trade the Red Sox made. Was it the right decision? Obviously, it wasn't the best return, but was it the right decision for the Sox?
As we stand here now, no, I do not think so at all. I don't think they showed that they were going to use that money. Extending your guys on 10 million a year is not a good excuse of reusing the Devers money. And Suarez clearly came from the Bregman money. So I don't think so. In the return, they've already just started whittling away. So now you've essentially replaced Devers with Caleb Durbin. Nobody can pretend that that's a good swap. I do fully understand it's a team sport, and if I'm not in the clubhouse, so if the clubhouse was falling apart under him, then he does have to go. I'm just not fully convinced that that was happening. And we didn't turn it around and win the World Series without him. We were a wild card team and lost the wild card, and we're missing a bat of exactly his caliber. And I fear that we're going to be looking back for the next few years saying we seem like we're missing a bat of his caliber. We're one Rafael Devers away from being a real World Series team. So I don't like to look back and think that that was a good trade for us, but knowing the pieces we have with Roman Anthony and Contreras coming in and Suarez and Sonny Gray, I still think they've rebuilt an amazing team. I think the Red Sox, the Devers trade, and then how bad we handled Harrison and Tibbs and Dustin May. it's almost overshadowed that they've made good improvements to this team. Regardless of that, it is sad to think what a return for Devers could have looked like that could have bolstered your MLB team more than just Caleb Durbin
Mhm.
on his own.
Yeah, I'm with you. That trade package kind of fell apart in a blink, right? I think the
Oh
only
yeah.
player that's left on the Red Sox, in their farm system is Jose Bayo. I think that's the only guy left. Was just I think he was an 18 to 19-year-old pitcher at the time when he was traded. So who knows what he'll end up being? Maybe he'll end up being the guy and be that throw in a trade that ends up being a stud, right? Like the James Shields trade. I think that ended up being Tatis going from the White Sox to the Padres, and then he ends up being a cornerstone player for the Padres. So who knows what Bayo will be? There were no expectations with him though. He's just a throw in, but that's the only guy that's left, and it's pretty crazy that we're sitting here, you know, uh, basically 8 months later, roughly, and basically the entire trade package is gone. And Durbin, like you said about Durbin, just to go back with him on him, is he's a good player, but that's not going to bring the power into the lineup that you need. This team's missing that 35 home run slugger potential. And Durbin's a guy that can put the ball in play. That's one thing, like you said about Yoshida, that we both agreed upon. He has a 96th percentile in whiff rate last year, Durbin, 98th percentile in strikeout percentage. Like he could put the ball in play. That's what this team kind of needs. But at the same time, they need that power as well. And you're not going to get that from him. And I think we got pennies on the dollar for Devers. And I wish we waited, which I was fine with trading him, honestly. I was. But I wish we waited until the deadline, let other teams know, okay, they're shopping him. Let's get involved. Let's see what we can offer because there's no way that's the best offer you can get. I know them, the San Francisco Giants chewing all that money and retaining his salary was probably a big asking point of the Boston Red Sox, but it's just tough to consider that you traded a player that was still, somewhat young at the time. I know Devers isn't 22 and 23, and he's not, the same age as Mayer and Anthony and those guys, but he's not old. It wasn't like he's on, the last stage of his career, and it was like, all right, he's an aging star. He wasn't, right? You still traded a younger bat, right? And, your best power bat as well, and you just didn't replace that. And then you lose Bregman in free agency. Within a year, you lose both of your star third basemen, right? What were your thoughts on Bregman walking in free agency?
Yeah, I mean, I think Bregman, like most MLB players, is just going for wherever he's getting the most money, and that's fair when they're throwing however much more million it was reported than us, like 25 million total, I think. I mean, you can't blame him. I know, did he come out and say that he would have stayed with the Sox maybe, but
Yeah.
I don't really buy all that. I think he's just going wherever he's getting the most money, but I think that's totally fair. And I don't hate not giving him that contract. He wasn't that special. He was hurt for a lot of the year. He was a really good hitter, but and I liked us using that money on Suarez, but I would have loved to replace him with a power bat as well. So I didn't hate letting him walk at all. It it it's another piece to that Devers trade where you brought him in and it created a massive issue with Devers. And to me, seems like the only valid reason that you dumped Devers as quick as you did, and you lose Bregman. That whole situation just ended so poorly, and I think Bregman walking makes it look even worse because you just don't even have Bregman to show for it. But for the money he got, and I think the no trade clauses he has in there, it's probably not a horrible contract. Sort of similar to the Xander situation. They handled it wrong in the year or two leading up, and then they let him walk in free agency for a bad contract and can turn around and say, "Well, look, we didn't pay him that, and that's fine." But we all remember what happened the 6 months before this. So I guess sort of like the Devers situation, you can really only move on and hope that ownership keeps spending. Spending wins baseball games. I don't think there's any question about that.
Mhm. Yeah, and we'll get to talking about spending when we get to talking about the Dodgers, which I'd love to get your opinions on them and their spending habits. But with this Red Sox team, you made a great point. Obviously, the Xander Bogart situation when he was coming up at the end of his contract, we could have traded him at the deadline if we knew we weren't going to re-sign him for the money he was going to get. We could even have offered him a contract before that season and gotten him for cheaper than he ended up signing with the Padres. Signed 11 years, I think it was 210 million, which was too much money for him at the time, and I understand why they let him walk for that money, but you could have got him for cheaper than that. Or it was 11 years, 280 million, I think it was. I think it was even more than that. I think
It
it was
was
more than three.
ridiculous. It might have begun with a three.
It was crazy. I'm gonna check up on that right now, but it was
It's
it
the
was
worst
crazy.
contract in baseball history, possibly.
Yes, it could be 11 years, 280 million. So that was a big time payday. But like you said, afterwards they look at it and they point and say, "Well, look at the money he got. We let him walk because that's the money he was offered. We weren't going to give him that. But at the same time, there were things you could have done earlier to make those situations better. You could have locked up Bogarts for cheaper before that season began, in the final year of his contract. With the Devers situation and Bregman, you end up losing both of them. So now you blink and both of them are gone. I think I understand why they let Bregman walk. Like you said, there were injury issues, and he's 31, turning 32 in the next week or so. On March 30th, he turns 32. So just about the next 10 days, he'll be 32 years old, and he's getting paid, 5 years, 175 million, $35 million a year. That's a heavy price tag, and I understand why the Cubs did it. They want to add power to that lineup. They lost Tucker in the last year. They lost Bellinger a couple years ago. They want to get a guy that can be a star in that lineup, and I get why they did that. The Red Sox, it just didn't really make as much sense giving him 35 million a year. He was a good player, but I don't know if he was worth that. At the same time, though, there is a drop off power wise from Devers to Bregman and now Bregman to Duran. You are losing, slugging potential, but I'm not going to place that on Duran. I'm not blaming him for the way things have gone. He's just in the lineup now in their position, taking over at third base. So I'm not blaming him for that at all. But he can be obviously a good, bat to ball player in this Red Sox lineup, especially a lineup that has a lot of swing and miss guys. Say down Rafaela, Carlos Narvaez, Willie Abreu. A lot of these guys will swing and miss at times, especially Sadon. So we'll see what Duran will do. But I think you made a great point about the Bogart situation, though. People don't talk about that. People don't ever revisit that situation, how we could have gotten him locked up for cheaper and less years than he got, and we ended up letting him walk in free agency. And then that same trade deadline, we could have traded JD Martinez, right? And I think he ended up walking in free agency as well, right? So it's just disappointing the way things kind of have gone for the Red Sox with star players the last, 5 years or so. But now when you look at this Red Sox lineup, you have Trevor Story at shortstop. He's back. That was a question mark after this past season ended in 2025. Will Trevor Story be back? Do you expect Trevor Story to still put up great numbers that he put up in 2025? There are obviously injury concerns, but he was healthy all of last season, which is great.
If he's healthy, I think those raw numbers can be good like they were last year. And he adds to that swing and miss profile. He's a huge swing and miss guy, but I don't hate it. I like knocking the ball out of the park. It's a guaranteed run if it leaves the park. So I don't hate it. I do get really scared with his injuries. That's where it's nice if Marcelo can be getting consistent MLB at bats. You can drop him right over at shortstop. I don't know if Durbin has any shortstop playability. I imagine not, but just someone that can shore up that third base position. So you're not over reliant on Trevor Story being healthy for a full season to have that strong bat in the lineup. But yeah, I'm excited he's back. I mean, he also just more reminders of the Xander situation. So equally not good contract. Even though he was great last year, I that doesn't justify that contract and what it costs to get him. So I'm happy Trevor Story's back. But that's what you expect from your 30 million a year guys. So that's what he's going to have to do.
Yeah,
'Cause he was very close to, I believe, being cut.
yeah,
So,
he was. He was like
uh,
early last year, even he was struggling,
oh
right?
yeah,
It
he was
was,
really bad to start the year. So maybe if he's and you've seen it in Colorado, although he was a bit of a Coors merchant, but you've seen the player he is in a full season. So if that second half Trevor Story is what he actually is, and he still had like these ridiculous slumps and highs, but if he's that player that's more high than slumping, he's a great baseball player. He's 30-30 at 32 years old or whatever he is. And that's what you need from your $30 million guys that are preventing us from making these other big signings. So I I do have high expectations for Trevor Story because that's what's placed on you with that contract. But I'm not confident he reaches them.
Yeah, I think it comes up with availability. That's probably what will end up being
Yep.
the situation. That's a question that comes up when you think Trevor Story is, can he be on the field? And if he is, he's still a good player, 30-30 potential, definitely. The power's been off and on at times, right? Where he had a stretch in his first year with the Red Sox where he's the best hitter of baseball for 2 weeks. And even this past year, he had some stretches where he was one of the better hitters in the game of baseball. Maybe not the best, but one of the better hitters in baseball. It was consistent at times. Like he just went through peaks and valleys where he'll be consistent for a couple weeks and then go on an 0 of 25 stretch. And he'll have some opportunities getting up in big situations right at the top of the lineup. He's going to get situations with guys on base in front of him, and there are times he'll come up big, times he won't. I guess that's the same thing for every player in baseball, but his peaks and valleys are definitely some of the highest of highs and the lowest of lows at times. But like you said, he could have gotten cut and he didn't. And I think we're thankful he didn't. I think it's good to have a leader in the clubhouse. Now with a lot of young guys, right? Like if you kept Devers, Devers is 29, he'd be one of the more older players, like veteran players on this Red Sox team if he was still there. Trevor Story's probably the biggest veteran player left on this team because you're left with a lot of young guys on this team. They need somebody that can pick up the guys around them and keep everybody focused. And Trevor Story's going to have to be that captain and leader for this team this year, especially with Bregman being gone. Jarren Duran will be back. He's been part of the Red Sox lineup now for the better of the last five or so seasons, 4 or 5 years now he's been in that Red Sox lineup. What are your expectations for him this year? I know 2 years ago was an all-star, had a great year. This past year, still a good season, just not as good as the year before. So I think that's why it gets overshadowed that he had still an all right season, like played well. It just wasn't as good as the year before. And I think that's why people are a little bit down on him. But are you down on Jarren Duran? And would you potentially look into trading him again, which I know that was a topic heading into the offseason?
Maybe I'd trade him just because you got that outfield logjam, and I think he's acknowledged by the entirety of the MLB as being a phenomenal baseball player. But that's why I'm comfortable with him. And like you said, people were down on the season he had, but looking at the numbers and how he played, it was just a good season from him. He's kind of a stud. So yeah, I love having Jarren Duran out there and in the lineup. I think he's awesome, and he's shown some consistency now. What is it, 3 years maybe? That he can rake. So I think what you have with Jarren Duran. His underlying metrics back it up. His last 3 seasons back it up. Um, if he re-elevates to that level he had 2 years ago, and that might have just been better luck coming off the bat, but if he re-elevates to that, like that is an absolute stud in your lineup. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure what return you're comfortable with getting for him because it's going to have to elevate your MLB roster in this season significantly, unless you're getting one of the top five prospects in baseball back.
Mhm.
And well, I guess they are for sale because it's the Padres and Dodgers, um, but yeah, I think he's an absolute stud. His in the outfield, I don't know, is almost getting pushed out of the outfield because how do you leave Sedan's glove out of the outfield, and how can you leave Roman Anthony out of the lineup? And same with Willie Abreu, but that's Cora's job to figure it out. I don't think they did a great job last year, but now he's got a year under his belt with this same crew. Hopefully, they're all more comfortable with each other and knowing that they're all great baseball players. But yeah, I love Jarren Duran in the Red Sox lineup. I think he's consistent, he's a monster, and it's under team control. So
Yeah, I think he adds in a factor to this lineup that not anyone else does on this Red Sox team, even on a lot of rosters of baseball. Everyone would love a guy that can give you, what he had a couple years ago, 14 triples, 48 doubles, a 285 batting average, 834 OPS, 21 home runs. He was terrific 2 years ago. Last year was still good, 16 home runs. Batting average did decline, 256 batting average, 84 RBIs, 24 stolen bases. But that speed, a lot of teams are looking for that guy that can give you some pop off the bat, 20 plus home run potential with 30, 40 stolen base potential as well, with that potential of turning singles into doubles any given at bat, puts pressure on the opposing defense to obviously get the ball back in, make the right throw, hitting the cutoffs. Like all of those things are that much more important when Durant's at the plate. I did think they were going to trade him heading into the offseason. Now that they didn't, though, I'm actually kind of happy because now I look at this lineup, and like you said, there is a logjam in the outfield. But at the same time, if you could still have his speed in this Red Sox lineup with some power potential, he's not going to give you probably 35 home runs, but like he can give you 20. Having that potential with that speed in this lineup and a guy that's been consistently healthy the last 3 seasons, just about, that's really important for this team, especially with a lot of guys that have had injuries. Roman Anthony, Willie Abreu, Trevor Story, Marcelo Mayer, all have had injury issues. Masataka Yoshida, Triston Casas, like the list goes on and on. Durant being that mainstay playing 150, 160 games, 162 even every single year of the last three for the most part. That's really important, right? That's why I'm happy they kept him because you look at this lineup and there is a spot for a guy that can steal some bases, can get on base with speed. Obviously, will play every single day. The question just is, where does he play? Is he the DH? Which I guess that brings into question where Yoshida's fit is, right, in this Red Sox lineup. But this is Cora's job, right, is to figure out where these guys fit. And he had all offseason to figure it out because the Red Sox didn't really necessarily add anyone besides Contreras and Durbin, and they were, positions of need at first and third. Besides that, everybody knew the Red Sox were going to have a logjam in the outfield, right? Like that wasn't a
Yep.
question at all. Do you think Durant being a DH takes away from him as a player? Like sometimes they say when you're playing DH every day, not hitting can get in your head, not playing the field gets in your head a little bit because every strikeout is, one step closer to your next step at, which is the same as if you're playing the outfield. But at the same time, when you're going out there after you strike out, you have something else to think about. When you're just playing DH and you're getting 3 or 4 at bats in a game, all you're thinking about is that last at bat, not the next play when you're, playing defensively. Do you think that takes away from Durant having him at DH?
I think you got to find that rotation for the DH. I think him, Roman, and Willier should be rotating through there. Right? Sedan needs to, if he is in the lineup, he obviously has to be in the field, and it should be in center field. When you see what a shutdown center fielder is so special in the MLB, and he is probably the second best behind Denzel Clark, maybe. He is unbelievable. So I think Duran, I don't want him to be full-time DH, and you want him to keep that fielding value if you are ever going to trade him. But like you just touched on, I think a lot of the trade talks last year were around getting a starting pitcher in return, someone that would enter into that rotation behind Crochet and really give us a two-headed monster for the playoffs. But you've shored that up now with Suarez and Sonny Gray and Toll and Early being here and ready to go. So I'm just not sure what return you're getting for Duran that doesn't either just give you the same logjam problem or just bolsters to a already stacked rotation that might not actually even need a fifth guy at this point.
Mhm.
So I think they just got to find that rotation and get everyone some reps in the field, keep them loose. If someone works at DH, though, if Willier goes to DH and he just rakes, just keep them there forever.
Mhm.
He doesn't
Mhm.
have to go back in the field.
Yeah.
Just whatever works. But I think the guy's got to see some consistency. I don't love platoon bats on young guys, so I'm hoping we're getting away from that. I don't know if we are. And I'd just like to see some positional consistency. And they've had, like you said, very similar roster and the same problem with the same players is there. But it shouldn't be a problem because you should have had time to address it. So
Mhm.
I imagine they've figured something out internally. And if they haven't, we could be in for another, difficult learning period for the beginning part of this season.
Mhm. Mhm. No, you made some excellent points there. You really did, which I think that's the thing with Duran, right? And Abreu and all these guys. If guys are working, right? If Duran starts working at DH, leave him there at that point, right? Like don't keep doing, okay, every other game we'll have Duran play DH, we'll give Willier a day off. That might hurt these guys just getting in their head a little bit, just like with Campbell. I know DH isn't like you're jumping from position to position. Like Campbell actually going from center field to second is a lot different than going from DH to right field every other day because you're obviously seeing the ball a lot differently in center field than you are at second base. When you're DHing and you're playing, right field every other day or whatever it is, it's a little different, obviously. You're still playing the same position on the diamond. It's just obviously some days you're not getting out there and playing defense. But I think consistency is going to be really important for this team. And Cora, at times it's worked, like the platoon things he's done. Like Rob Refsnyder had a lot of success at times. Nate Eaton's had success at times, which I like both those players. I know Refsnyder's now gone and Eaton's still around. Romy Gonzalez has been a platoon guy at different positions, during his time here in Boston. It's worked at times, but with these young guys, I don't think it really helps. Like I think that's the problem is they need those consistent at bats, consistent, innings on defense where they can make mistakes, right? These young guys are going to make mistakes. Like Duran, when he first came into the MLB, it took him two years to really adjust to playing center field in the MLB. Maybe even 3 seasons it took him. Like the last couple years, he's been a lot better defensively, but it took him some time. That's just the way it is. You need to let them kind of have a margin for error, and that goes for any sport. A young quarterback, you need to let them make mistakes to learn to try to see, what they need to do to be the best at the professional level. So we'll see, what the Sox do, with that lineup and especially with the outfields. But now I'm going to ask you your expectations for the Red Sox and where they stack up against the rest of the AL East. I know we talked pitching rotations wise, where they stack up against the AL East and the AL and the MLB in general. Where do you think the Red Sox as a team will finish in the AL East this season?
Yeah, for about the 100th year in a row, the AL East is an absolute wagon. So it's tough to say, but I like us at two, and I'm biased, but I guess a real biased person would put us at one. But I think the Blue Jays are an elite team. That their rotation is legit. They showed last year what they can do. I don't think Bichette's a big enough loss for them, and they replace him with I think Okamoto from Japan. I think they made some other additions that are just leaving my mind now, but I think they're looking just as stacked as last year and ready to go, and that rotation's bolstered. So I can't comfortably put us above them because we had a similarly strong offseason, but they were much better than us last year. I do like us more than the Yankees, especially with their injuries in the rotation. Schlittler's awesome, Fried's awesome, but Will Warren isn't an amazing pitcher. The middle and back end of their rotation isn't amazing. Cole already was starting to have a little bit of a decline, and I think he'll come back and be great because he's just an all-time great pitcher. But I think they're just missing a little bit from the pitching department, and they're kind of having a mess at shortstop, and that's not going away anytime soon. Once Volpe's back from injury, I don't know what they'll do with him. Dominguez doesn't look like anything special, but it's the Yankees, so they have an insane amount of power in their lineup. So I could easily see them finishing above us, but I like us more this year. I think the Orioles, Alonso was a big pickup. I didn't love them trading Grayson Rodriguez though. They did get Shane Baz. So I think all the teams have could really finish in any of the five spots. I don't see a world where the Blue Jays aren't in the top three at least, but everyone else, yeah, nothing would surprise me really with this division. Um, I'm not sure the Rays look amazing this year, especially compared to the rest of the teams, but they always work some magic and their pitching is always, they always have something. But I think the Rays are probably five. I like the Sox too. I'll go Yankees three just because they always find a way, but Orioles might be the best fourth place team in baseball history. So
Yeah, this AL East is stacked, and like you said, it's like the 100th year in a row. It feels like the last 5, 10 years, you don't know who's going to be in first place, who's going to be in second, who's going to be in third, heading into each year. And I think that's the beauty of the AL East, right? Is that you know you're going to be playing great baseball, and even if the Red Sox are struggling, which me and you will go to games at Fenway no matter what, but even if they're struggling, you know good teams are coming in, they're playing really good competition. So that goes for any of these teams in the AL East. You know you're going to be playing good teams every other night, so it helps from a fan's perspective. You know you're always going to be tuning in to watch somebody, whether it's a Red Sox or an Oriole. I think with this Red Sox team, I think they're the most balanced team, especially in comparison to the Yankees. I think the Yankees, which you don't know what you're getting out of certain guys like Giancarlo Stanton. If he's healthy, yeah, he can give you 30, 35 home runs, but I don't know. I think he's past his prime, and I don't think that's a crazy thing to say. I think a lot of people agree on that. Like Stanton's definitely past his best days of playing baseball. Bellinger's good. Can you can you expect the same amount of production this year? Who knows? You still have the best player or best hitter probably in the MLB in Aaron Judge, right? Um, I think it's fine to say the best player in the MLB. Like you still have him in your lineup, which is great. There is a question mark at shortstop. I think there's even a question mark at third base. Jazz Chisholm, I know he was at third, he was at second at times. He's played outfield at one point in Miami. We'll see, where he kind of fits in their lineup from a full-time standpoint. I think it's supposed to be second base, but because I think they acquired a third baseman, if I remember correctly. But I think Chisholm could be a guy they move on from at some point. He's a guy I like a lot, but I think they could move him at some point. So there are question marks with that team more than I think there are with the Red Sox. Gerrit Cole's injury being a big time question mark. Rodon was good last year, so and same thing with Fried. They have two good lefties at the top of their rotation in the event that Cole has to be taking less of a toll being that top guy, and like you said, a generational pitcher. So if he's healthy, he's always going to be, one of the better pitchers in the game of baseball. But I think this Red Sox team is one of the most balanced teams, even without the power. I think power would be great having that Devers bat in this lineup. But I think pitching wise, talent wise, this team is very competitive. The Blue Jays, like you said, especially coming off the year they did, is very impressive. You're going to have expectations for the Blue Jays to be good again, and I think everyone should. They're a good team. I think the third place is where I think the Blue Jays fall, and I think they'd be the best third place team in baseball in the event that happens. My order of the AL East, which it's crazy, it's a hot take. I like the Orioles. I got the Orioles in first, which is crazy considering the last kind of year and change that they've had. They really have fallen off, especially last year. They fell off a little bit, especially from where they were the prior two seasons, getting better each year for the most part. I like the Orioles to be in first. The additions they made with Pete Alonso, Taylor Ward's great. That adds power to their lineup. They've been missing that with Santander leaving in free agency, which he was a complete miss for the Blue Jays last year, but losing his bat was tough for that lineup last year. Adding those two power bats is big time for them. They boasted their rotation, getting Shane Baz, like you said. Chris Bassett, a good guy just to have, chew up some innings in the rotation. Zach Eflin, Ryan Helsley will be great for their bullpen. They've had some bullpen issues at times in the past. because it seems like every year they have a good bullpen guy they end up trading at the deadline just to add prospects. And I guess that formula has worked at some times for them. I like them at first. I like the Red Sox in second. I'm going to go Blue Jays in third. With that being said, I could see the Blue Jays finishing first, and no one would be surprised. And then I'm gonna go the Yankees at fourth, the Rays in fifth, which is pretty crazy having the Yankees at fourth, considering they were a team that won a playoff series, beat the Red Sox last year, and still have a lot of talent on this team. But I think there are question marks with this year's squad heading into the year. Shortstop, who knows what you'll get from Volpe when he's back from injury? I feel bad for Volpe, honestly. I think if he wasn't in the New York market and he was somewhere in a smaller market where he could make mistakes and kind of learn and be a young player that doesn't have as high expectations around him than he has, when he was stepping into the majors, I think he would be flourishing maybe elsewhere. Maybe I don't know if he'd be the same caliber of a player that people had expectations wise for him, but I don't think being in New York has helped him. I think it's placed a lot of pressure on him, even if that's his childhood team and he's, playing, right down the street from where he grew up, I think in New Jersey. But we'll see what he does this year. Hopefully he bounces back, honestly, for his sake. I feel bad for him. Being in New York, there's just so much pressure on him. And then fifth place, the Rays. But with that being said, they have young talent where you could see them being third place, and I don't think anybody would be necessarily surprised, right? They have Junior Camaro's great. He's that next young, talented player for them that could take that next step and be, one of the better hitters in the game of baseball. So, and he had a great year last year. Was already a top hitter in the league and was an all-star for good reason. So, we'll see where they fall, but I think this year's AL East is going to be really competitive. What do you think the Red Sox floor is? I know you said any team could fall 1 through 5, and I think that's honestly really accurate. I would say personally, the Red Sox floor is probably fourth. I don't see them falling in fifth at all, but with that being said, I guess there's not much of a difference between fourth and fifth. So
Yeah,
I guess
well, I fourth can be a playoff team these days, right? Yeah.
right.
So
Good
I
point.
think four, um, it's hard to say with the MLB and playing that many good division games. Like there is definitely a world we miss the playoffs, but I like to think our floor is the last wild card team, fourth in the division. I do. The more I think on it, I think the Rays are going to be fifth, but it's just the Rays, so you never know. So we could finish beneath them, but that applies to everybody. So I like us as four for the floor. That Yankees power core of Bellinger, Rice, Judge, Stanton, if they're all in Jazz, if they're all playing and Rodon and Cole can even come back slightly healthy, they can easily win the division and it
Yeah.
would be favored almost to win the division. So I like fourth because the breakout potential of the Orioles and what they showed just 2 years ago is pretty awesome. I don't know if they have that rotational power to keep up with everyone else, but they have a sleeping giant in Basalo, and everyone knows it. But if he breaks out this year to go along with Gunnar, that is, and Dylan Beavers as well, that's a scary, really scary team. But yeah, I think four is the floor, and as long as we're in the playoffs, I'll then base the season off whatever they do in the playoffs. I would like to see them win the division, um, or host the first round in the wild card. That'd be nice if you're a higher wild card, but you know, a lot of teams are stacked in our division. We're going to be playing harder baseball than some of the other teams in the AL, so I can easily see us bottom of the playoffs.
Yeah, I think that's a great floor. I think being a playoff team, even to the last wild card, would be great. And like you said, you're gonna be playing really good teams. That was my point earlier, right? Is every night you're gonna be playing some really good competition. I think that's the best part of the AL East is you're seeing really good teams every given night. From a fan's perspective, it can be fun. Like I said already, from a team's perspective, it just makes it more difficult, right? But at the same time, if you want to make the playoffs, you're gonna have to be, competitive with those teams in your division, which we've seen the Red Sox in the past struggle in the division, especially 2, 3, 4 years ago, they were really struggling in the AL East year in and year out. Last year was obviously a much better season in the AL East. Hopefully that continues this year. We'll end up seeing. But I think the Orioles rotation, you're right. There's definitely a question mark with them. I think they have another sleeper in Trevor Rogers. I think he can be, which I know he was inconsistent early on in his career, had high ERAs before getting traded over to the Orioles. Last year was really good for them, though, in those games that he played. I like him a lot. I think he's one of the more underrated players in the game of baseball. I think he's being overlooked in some regards, but I do completely agree with you, though. Talent wise, rotation wise, like for each team's pitching staffs, They're not, as talented probably as the Blue Jays, the Red Sox, and the Yankees. Which the Yankees, another guy we mentioned earlier, Cam Schlittler, right? Like, there's a lot of talent in a lot of these rotations, and Schlittler would probably be the two or the three on that Orioles team, maybe, right? Like,
Probably I mean, I'm forgetting
maybe
about
six.
Bradish even as well.
Brash is
That
good.
Orioles team, it's just every time you think of them, a new guy pops up. So
Yeah.
it's a scary division. I still don't. Yeah, wow. Even with Bradish, uh, who Rogers and Baz, I still don't think it stacks up just because of how good that Red Sox top three and that Blue Jays top seven or whatever they've got going on now is just it's unbelievable. But yeah, nothing would surprise me. Any four of those teams topping the division, um, yeah, it wouldn't surprise you at all.
Mhm. Mhm. Absolutely. That's an excellent point. I think the best way to sum it up is what you said earlier. Anyone could fall 1 through 5, and you wouldn't be shocked. I don't think either way. Unless the Blue Jays, I think if they go from being in the World Series and being, an inch away from winning the World Series, and now they're the fifth place team, like that would be shocking. But anyone else though could fall 1 through 5, and the Blue Jays, I feel like their floor is probably three, I guess maybe four. But in the AL East, the last couple of years, 2 through 4, some years are separated by a game or two,
Yep.
a couple games maybe. So there wouldn't be too much of a gap between those teams, maybe. And I think talent wise, there isn't too much of a gap, I'd say, especially with what the Orioles did, this past offseason. And what would you say now looking outside the AL East with the entire MLB, which teams do you think stood out most in free agency and, on the trade market, from the offseason?
I liked the Mets picking up Peralta a lot. I know they lost Alonso, but I really like Freddie Peralta. I thought that was an unbelievable acquisition. That's just straight to the top of your bullpen. And the Mets farm system is unbelievable. It's so deep, and all these guys are just flying through it on pitching and hitting. So they got a lot of pieces. They can build an even stronger lineup if you want. But when you have the $700 million man, and then you add Freddie Peralta on top of that, they just got a great lineup. I really like the Mets this year. I was a big fan. I like the Tigers picking up Valdez. I just love one of the best teams in baseball throwing on one of the top free agents. That's a no-brainer. That's a great pickup for them. So yeah, I really like Mets, Tigers for the offseason at least.
Mhm.
Uh, the A's held pat a little bit, but I do actually like the Athletics this year. I think a bit of a sleeper team, but that's really just off some player growth and more consistent innings for some of these guys for them.
I completely am with you on the A's. I think they're a sleeper team in the AL, and I'm not expecting them to win the World Series, but I think they're going to be a lot more competitive this year than they've been in years past. And Nick Kurtz, a guy that I think is the best, which is tough to say, who's the best young player in the game of baseball, but most underrated young player in the game of baseball, I think is Nick Kurtz. I think he can be an MVP candidate this year. And I think even this past season, in the limited games he played in, it was 117 games, 36 home runs, 290 batting average, 86 RBIs, 619 slugging, and a 1002 OPS as a 22-year-old rookie. Like, and that's in 117 games. So I think that team could really take a jump up this year, the A's. I like that pick a lot from you. I really do. That's probably my sleeper team too. I think the Tigers, even though they had a good year last year and they faltered towards the end, and kind of eked their way into. Do they make the playoffs right at the border of making it? I know them and the Guardians had like really crazy stretch for that AL Central at the end of the season. Which I think the Tigers still ended up getting in, and the Guardians got in right after them. But the Tigers, I like the moves they made, getting Valdez, getting Verlander as well, which he's still, somewhat productive. He may not be the same pitcher he was when he was a Cy Young winner, but could still, chew some innings and still get some strikeouts for you. My top teams from the offseason, though, I like the Tigers, like you said, they're probably my third. I like the Orioles first, and then I like the Mets. I think the Mets, though, like you said, they did lose guys, Alonso being one, McNeil, Edwin Diaz, Brandon Nimmo. They did add some pieces too, though, and Ryan Helsley being another guy they lost, but they added some pieces too. Um, Polanco from the Mariners, who was great. Jorge Polanco was awesome in the playoffs for them. Freddie Peralta, with that trade, was an awesome acquisition. Marcus Semien, he's probably past his best days of baseball. I don't know if he's going to have a year where he bounces back and is the form of what he was 2 or 3 years ago, but he can be still productive. Bo Bichette was a good ad for them. Luis Roberts, an underrated ad, getting some power in that lineup with what they lost with Alonso. I like that Mets team. I'm gonna say Orioles, Mets, and then probably Tigers. And the Tigers just because they were really good last year, and you add one of the better pitchers in baseball in Framber Valdez, and you add in some depth pieces around those guys as well. There's some other teams I feel like that could be third. Like the Red Sox honestly had an underrated offseason, I would say. Like I could put them in third and it'd probably be more on the bias side putting them in third place, but I like what they did this offseason. Could put them in third, and I don't think that's a problem, honestly. But I think the A's, like you said, they kind of stood pat. That's my sleeper team. Do you have any other sleeper teams you want to mention? The A's being one for me as well. I think the Pirates even could be a team that surprises some people a little bit this season.
I'm glad you said it first because I was gonna name the Pirates and I didn't want to come back as worst team in baseball, but uh, I do like the Pirates. They have a good rotation over there. They had a couple good free agent pieces. Like it's a solid lineup. It's definitely not a special lineup, but it's better than it was. They definitely need an O'Neal Cruz breakout if they want to go anywhere though. Or a Connor Griffin breakout. Both would be preferred, but if you can just get some of that potential, like 80% of what anyone thinks either of those guys can be, you have a very special team and you just recapped it. But that Mets offseason was pretty unbelievable. I completely even forgot about Louis Robert there. Like that's just a great offseason for them. Alonso, it's tough to lose a franchise legend, but not a lot of winning under Pete Alonso.
They recouped well though. They did.
Oh
I think
yeah.
I think
Oh
they
yeah.
rebuilt things pretty well,
Definitely. Use that
especially
money well.
yeah,
Bichette, Robert, I mean, just shore up the entire infield. And with that prospect pool they have, that's a scary team. That's a really scary team, but I like them because they beat the Yankees rival as well. So
yeah.
I like the Mets. I guess I didn't mention the Blue Jays. I really like the Blue Jays offseason. Just they picked up, it's a bit of a fringe pickup, of Cody Ponce
Mhm.
coming back from the KBO maybe or the Japanese league. He had MVP and like a 9.4 or 0.94 ERA. He's like 31. It was horrible in the MLB, but he's a completely different pitcher now, and he's been dominating spring training. So completely sleeper pickup to look for there for the Jays. And it's crazy. He wouldn't be battling for a rotation spot anywhere else, but he sort of is in Toronto, but it's looking good for him. And he's signed for 10 mil. So
Yeah.
that
That, that's pretty crazy. I didn't even know that he signed there, honestly. I did not hear about that. That's a good
now
pull by a good
it is
pull.
a good one. It's a good pull by the Blue Jays. Honestly, you'd think a guy with sub one ERA winning MVP could get a little more in the market, but 31 and bad in the MLB in your previous stints. But with pitchers, they just, a lot of them have the tools. It's just about throwing it all together, and it happens randomly. It happens for some guys in their mid 30s, happens for other guys first year. So he seems like he's pieced it together, and I think that's a big pickup for them. But they just had I love their offseason.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think Mets, Blue Jays for me.
Yeah.
And the Pirates a bit of a sleeper there too.
Pirates added Ozuna, which I know he's probably past his prime, but they needed power in that lineup that can, with one swing of the bat, give you, bases clearing home run. And that's something they've been missing. I think they probably thought O'Neal Cruz was going to be that guy sooner than he's been, but still very talented player and he's still young. So can't give up on the expectations there. But I do think they've had a sleeper offseason. And I think even the Cincinnati Reds adding a couple guys too, which it was not the best offseason, so I wouldn't put them in the top three, but they added Eugenio Suarez. Getting, his power in the lineup is good for them. An issue for them has just been health, I feel like their rotation's been a lot better than their record shows with the guys they've had the last couple of years, like Nick Lodolo and Chase Burns, Hunter Green. Like they've had a lot of talent. It's just guys getting hurt that's been a problem for that team. I actually like the Cincinnati Reds being a sleeper team a little bit this year, but the NL is tough. Even the AL, like there's so many good teams in each of those leagues. It's really hard to work your way out from being, outside of the playoffs into getting into the playoffs. Need things to kind of click and everything to go the right way. One guy, the Pirates, I feel like that gets slept on a little bit. That is a top prospect is Bubba Chandler. I think he's a guy that could have a really good year for them. I know he's still pretty young. I have some numbers written here on him, I believe. 4-1 last season. Limited games. I think he only had like 8 or 9 starts, but I think he could be a guy that takes a step up. I know he's still, I think, has his rookie status, so you can't give him too much expectation, I think, but he's a guy that gets slept on a little bit. So I think that's why the Pirates can have a good year. And some guys compared to what they were in years past, not be the worst team in baseball, which that's not roast them. They've been really struggling in years past. If you end up being a place or two higher in your division, that's a win, I would say. If you can do that within a year or two, build your way up, which we'll see where they are. But they got Paul Skeens, who's been, one of the most consistent pitchers in baseball the last couple of years, with Tarek Skubal, Garrett Crochet, both of those, all three of those guys being, just terrific and dominant to watch the last few seasons. So we'll see what things fall there. And then as for your most underrated player in the game of baseball, mine is Nick Kurtz. I don't know if he's necessarily underrated. I just don't think he gets talked about enough in respect to the other top hitters in the game of baseball. If I'm starting a franchise today, Nick Kurtz honestly is probably a top three pick of mine, which I think that might sound crazy to a lot of people, but I think Nick Kurtz is ridiculous. I saw him play at BC against Wake Forest when BC played them a couple years ago. Saw him play in person, Siva King, Chase Burns. They had 3 or 4 first round picks on that roster, and they were really fun to watch. I think Nick Kurtz would be maybe even my number one pick. Genuinely, I might start a franchise with him today. And I know you love watching prospects, and you have a lot of in-depth insight on where prospects are right now, where they got drafted, and what they were doing in college versus the minor leagues. So that's why I want to ask you this question: who's the most underrated player in the game of baseball right now? And then maybe who's your most underrated prospect?
Underrated in the game right now, I might go Ivan Herrera on the Cardinals. He rakes.
Catcher.
He was hurt last year for a little bit, but even when he played like most of the season, he just absolutely raked. I feel like everyone knows it when you look at him. He just doesn't necessarily get ranked high. Similar, but I think he has a little more hype and he's put together some decent numbers. But Ben Rice, shout out to a mask guy, but he is a monster. I think everybody knows that. If he gets off a platoon, he doesn't hit lefties as well, but it won't matter. He will put the ball out of the park. So I'll go Herrera and Ben Rice for hitters. I think I'm Denzel Clark. I don't want to call it underrated. I think he can be a better hitter than he was last year. But that's watching the plays he made, and that one where he climbs the wall. He did it like twice in a week. I think you're watching some of the best center field defense ever. I'm not sure that's getting recognized as because it's not just those plays. His natural center field defense is unbelievable. So that I think if Denzel Clark even bats like 680, you're talking about like the best center fielder in baseball. So he's unbelievable. And then for prospect, I'll be super biased. I'll say Mike Sirota. I think he's getting respected on prospect lists, but I think he has that pop to in talent. I mean, he was supposed to be a top 10 pick, just slight down year, and a down year in college is batting like 380. The second he touched the minor leagues, he's just torn the cover off the ball. So, and the Dodgers saw that and they traded an MLB player straight up for him. So I think it's hard to even say he's underrated. The Nationals have a good prospect pool. They just had a guy yesterday, no longer underrated as well, like Miguel Sime through 100. He's new, but he can play. But yeah, I like Mike Sirota there. I like
Yeah.
Sirota to be in the MLB in the next couple of years and stick for a long time. And I think he's got some star potential there as well.
I do too. I think he's all-star caliber, and it's crazy to say, and I've said it on the podcast a couple times. And I used to be on the BC radio, WZBC, and I remember I had a radio show that night. It was the first time I saw Sirota play. It was a game mid-March in 2022. It was Northeastern versus Bryant. And I remember leaving that game, and he played really well in their games in Florida, and I think at NC State at that time. They had some games on the road, but then they came home for their home opener. I think that was the game I went to, maybe the second home game of the season, if not. And I remember watching that game, and he already was putting up decent numbers right away as a freshman. And I remember leaving that game, and I saw him that day run the bases really well, play great defense. You saw the bat to ball skills, you saw the power skills. I saw 5-tool ability the second I saw him play. And I remember leaving that game, I was talking to my parents, and I was like, I know it's crazy expectations. And my dad's like, it's pretty crazy to say after just one game. But I said he had the ability to be the next Mike Trout, which we'll see what ends up happening. That's very, very high expectations. That's Hall of Fame potential, one of the best players ever, and probably the best player of our generation, saying Mike Trout. But I saw 5-tool ability when I saw him play. And I think you're seeing that now in the minor leagues. I think there was questions about him after his junior year because he was hurt and his batting average dropped to like right around 300, which is still a good season in many regards. I know college baseball is a little different because you play less games and the power and the players you're playing against is a little bit different competition wise, and it would be in single A and double A and all that. But I saw full, 5 tool potential when I saw him play in person. I know you saw him play as well at Northeastern. So I think that's probably the best underrated prospect to bring up. And I completely agree with you on that. I think he's going to be in that Dodgers lineup in the next year or so. And you'll be in a lineup where you're surrounded by, which we'll see on Mookie Betts is at that point a year or two down the line. But Mookie Betts, Freddie Freeman, Shohei Ohtani, Kyle Tucker now. It's like Will Smith. Teoscar Hernandez is still there. Like that talent you're around, and you could be the ninth player in that lineup and be kind of what the Astros had a few years ago when Kyle Tucker was really young and he was batting eighth or ninth in that lineup at one point when he first stepped in. And that was a lineup that was surrounded with Altuve and Bregman and Springer. Like, I think Sirota could be that guy in that Dodgers lineup where you just have a young gun, you add to that lineup and just say, hey, you know what? You're going to get some at bats here, which we'll see, where he'll fit in the lineup because I know this Dodgers team is really talented right now and he's still young. So I think they're not going to rush him, is my point. Like, they don't need to rush him by any means. But you give him a year or two, I think he's going to be a mainstay in that Dodgers lineup and be an MLB All-Star. And I think that's fine to say. And would you agree, All-Star potential?
Oh yeah, all-star potential. And to your point with him being on the Dodgers, not only do they have a stacked MLB team, I mean, they're number one farm in baseball. They've got a log jam in the single A outfield. I'm unheard of. So that is that's the scariest team ever. They're so good at prospect development though. When he's ready, he'll be up there. Or he'll be traded for a great piece for them and he'll be a stud somewhere else. I'd just like to see him get that playing time when he's ready. But if he's able to beat out some of those other prospects for those MLB spots in the next few years, that's when you won't even have to see him play. If the Dodgers know he's better than those guys, he'll be ready.
Mhm.
So
And
just a loaded farm over there.
it's a great landing spot, though. They develop talent so
Oh,
well. You made a great
unbelievable.
point. Number one farm system. And it seems like every year which the Padres have done it in recent years too. They still sometimes recoup. Same thing with the Rays. They always have good prospects, but no one's been like the Dodgers where you could spend top tier money, make big time trades and trade big time prospects and draft so well and keep developing that young talent where you're just replenishing year in and year out. Getting Sirota in a trade for Gavin Lux was an absolute steal. Like right
Yeah.
when I saw that trade, I was like, I don't know what the Reds were thinking because Gavin Lux is a good player, but when you're trading that young of a player that has that star potential, and I know second and third base and outfield has been issues for the Reds in recent years, like just trying to fill some of those positions in the infield and even some of the outfield positions, which I know Lux has played a little outfield as well, I think. It was a crazy trade to me, especially with how young Sirota is and seeing him play, both of us, which Schlittler gets a lot of the, Northeastern praise right now when people talk Northeastern baseball, which I get it because he's doing that in the MLB and it's completely understandable. But I think a year or two from now, Sirota is going to get that same attention where people are going to be like, wow, Northeastern baseball isn't known just for having, Cam Schlittler over the last couple of years, which all credit to him, he's been amazing. But you'll have Sirota being in that conversation as well, another guy that can be a star and, capture eyes right away. And you're going to a lineup where you don't really need to be a 2020 guy day one. You don't need to be on that Dodgers team, with how good they
Yep.
are. And they've had so many guys that they've traded in recent years that are good prospects. Like, and one of my most underrated players in the game of baseball, I'll name now, Ryan Pepio on the Rays. I think he's one of the most underrated players in the game of baseball. And the Dodgers were fine with trading him because they were like, you know what? We have too many guys in our rotation. There's no spot for him. Let's go and trade him and maximize his value now. And I hope the Dodgers don't do that with Sirota because I think he's in a great landing spot there in LA. But you never know, right? Baseball and the way the Dodgers have operated, they're not afraid to make a big time move. And you kind of have to not be when you're trying to go for a three-peat, at the end of
Oh
the day.
yeah.
You
I'd
know,
love to see him finish his development in LA, but I would not mind if when he's close, he gets traded somewhere else and gets that everyday playing time. I just want to see him. I want to see him in the MLB and reach that potential that everyone at Northeastern knows he has. And it's in hindsight, the second he started raking in the minors, I'm sure so many MLB GMs and the Reds GM were just like, why did we ever lose that top 10 pick potential? You know it's within the player. So they were all kicking themselves. If the Dodgers ever called me looking for one of my prospects willing to give up MLB players, I'm hanging up immediately. I hate that idea. So didn't
complete.
work out for the Sox last year either. So,
Yeah.
but you're right with Pepio. He's a great player, a great pitcher. He's just consistent. I don't know if he has that same like top ceiling, but you get a guy that consistent. I'm not sure any GM anywhere would complain about that. So,
Mhm. Yeah. And you're going from LA to Tampa Bay where they develop
oh
talent
yeah,
very well. And
exactly.
it seems like both of those teams will always trade top players. And the Dodgers do it more so prospects wise. The Rays do it more so young players sometimes they'll just trade and get more prospects in return. We've seen them do that. Where at the deadline every year, they'll trade a guy with a year or two left of team control and just go get prospects. The Dodgers are kind of doing the reverse of that, right? They're trading their prospects to go get those types of guys. But they replenish year in and year out. And I think with that Rays pitching development, every year they have a guy that no one really knows about that ends up just developing into something, which Baz has done that right there, and it became really good for them. And now obviously he's gone, but Pepio's been successful there. And the Dodgers, like you noted with with Sirota, I think you're right. Where in the event they trade him, it wouldn't be a bad thing for him to go to a place where he can play day in and day out and get that experience on an MLB roster you're playing every single day. Because if you're going to this World Series contending team right now and they're trying to go for a three-peat, it would be tough to fit in the lineup right now and get consistent at bats. Obviously, I wouldn't expect him to be in this lineup, especially early on right now, but maybe a September call up potentially at the earliest. But I think probably a year from now is when I expect him to be right on that roster, bubble of being in the lineup from spring training into opening day. But when do you think the earliest is you can expect Mike Sirota in an MLB lineup?
I can't imagine they have any need for him this year, no matter how well he hits. But yeah, you could definitely see him 2027. Especially if he just has a great year this year and keeps following that same path, I think 2027 makes total sense. He was a college guy, so they have that shorter time frame to have to reach the MLB because they're physically mature and they've just seen more pitches. So 2027, I like that as a target date. Would absolutely love to see him find a way into the playoff push, but not on the Dodgers. Definitely not on the Dodgers. Just they got other guys they can bring up if they want to.
You're right. You're right. It'd be
Just
a lot of pressure
ridiculous.
too on him, right?
Oh
Like that'd
yeah.
be the
Oh
tough
yeah.
stepping onto that
It's not
team.
beyond it. They brought up Freeland pretty late last year and he
Yep.
stunk. So
Mhm.
probably learned their lesson. They brought up that catcher they had. He wasn't good either.
Dalton Rush
So
rushing.
yeah, a little bit of they're rushing the prospects a little, but
Yeah,
with the outfield, they're just
Dalton
so
Rushing too. Rushing. Yeah, it's
couldn't
good
help
wording
myself,
there.
but couldn't help myself. He was better than Freeland, but yeah, I think with the outfield, they just got such a surplus. It's a joke.
Yeah,
They-
yeah.
they-
Year in and year out, they just keep replenishing. But they have rushed some guys, and that's hurt them. Michael Bush was a guy they somewhat rushed, I feel like, and then he struggled a little bit for the Dodgers, but showed potential, and then they ended up moving him, and he's been better, obviously getting consistent at bats there in Chicago with the Cubs. And I guess that's a similar player that you can talk about with Sirota because Bush was the top 100 prospect, just like Sirota is right now, top 50. Even I think Sirota probably falls right now. I haven't looked in the last 2 or 3 weeks, but I know he's
60-ish,
been,
yeah. I
I
think
think
so. 50
he's
to
just
60.
rising. Is he around 60, you said?
I think so.
Yeah,
I think
that's
so.
great. And I
Oh
think
yeah.
Bush was kind of around that. And I felt like they somewhat rushed him and then, ended up moving on from him pretty quick. And I wouldn't want that to happen here with Sirota. I think if he stays in double A, triple A this year, that's going to only play to his advantage because once he does get into an MLB roster and it's not going to be a, hey, we're going to send you up here now for 10 at bats and send you down to triple A. It's going to be a consistent spot. So we'll see, where he falls there. But I do want to get your thoughts on the World Series and in the MLB award predictions. But anything else you want to add in about underrated players in the league? Since I know you know a lot about prospects, you know a lot more than the average fan does about MLB prospects. Or any other guys you want to point out and shout out?
Tony Blanco Jr. for the Pirates. He hits nukes. He's lowered the K rate in the minors every year. He's all he does is hit nukes. You can look him up. He is a massive individual. He's probably like Joey Gallo at best, but there is a world he is just destroying the ball in 5 years. So if you want a really deep prospect at the moment to get excited about, that's your guy. In Santiago, Solarte from this most recent international class is like 6'8", playing shortstop. So always excited about the athletic freaks. But Tony Blanco Jr. has actually shown the ability to hit the baseball. So that's one for me to get excited about. I think he's in the Pirates organization. So
All right, I'll take a look. I don't know either of those players, so I'm gonna have to go and take a look and dive into these prospect pools. Since, like I said, you do follow it, very in depth, and that's why the common fan will know the MLB players and who's in their major league lineup each and every day. But knowing in depth who's in single A and double A and top prospects in each place is really impressive. And one other question I want to ask you: who has an underrated farm system? I think the Mets is one you kind of already mentioned, where they've had a lot of guys go up their system pretty quick in recent years. But who do you think has an underrated system as a team?
Yeah, it might just be the Mets. Like, I'm not sure they're actually underrated right now, though, but it's so stacked. It's the Dodgers and Mets farms are so scary loaded. Um, I'm trying to think of who else would have a good one just off the top of my head. The Brewers have some really top quality talent with Made and Pena at
Mhm.
the top. So I like the Brewers as well. I think they got a lot of good stuff going. And I think Buster Posey at the Giants, he spent a lot in the international market last 2 years. I think he's brought in the number one international prospect. So those don't usually pay off for a while, but both of those guys I think are playing in the States this year with Joswar Gonzalez and Luis Hernandez. So two guys to look out for when we're both in our 30s, maybe our 40s as well. But yeah, I actually like what Buster Posey's been building. I don't know if he's been able to flesh out the full farm system. But yeah,
Yeah.
the Mets, that Mets, watch out for them. Either deadline or just bringing those guys up because they're so loaded.
Yeah. Carson Bench, right, is their kind of top guy, right? A lot of people.
Bench, AJ Ewing, uh, Jack Wenninger, Jacob Reimer. They got a good, it's just a good crew. It's deep. It's a really deep pool, and they're all sort of knocky on the MLB right now. They just got rid of Jet Williams to get Peralta, but he had been a part of that's a big pickup for the Brewers as well. Yeah, I like the Brewers, I think. That's my underrated one. I don't know
Well, they
if
got
they're underrated actually. I don't know where people have them on the consensus list, but
I'm with you on that. I think the Brewers are underrated. And even though, right, Kyle Harrison's probably no longer considered a prospect at this point, I'd say, right? Even though
I don't
he's
know if
still,
he hit his 50 innings to lose the status.
did he? Either way, regardless, like still a young player, like that's an underrated pickup for them, especially with what he's been doing in spring training. I thought that was tough for the Sox to give up on him. Jet Williams, still young. I know, the Mets kind of with where they're at right now. They had to go and get a stop pitcher, which I get. It made sense moving on from him, especially with the guys they have coming up at some point. Maybe they could even move one of their top prospects now at some point mid-season, which I've seen teams do it, especially the Dodgers. They do it every year, it seems like, to go and get that extra piece that can maybe help them make an NLCS run, make a trip to the World Series, which we'll see. But now I definitely want to get your thoughts on the World Series. Where do your predictions stand currently? And then we'll dive into talking award predictions quickly as well.
I like the Blue Jays. I'm hoping, I think they made enough additions and a little bit of roster turnover and strengthen rotation where it won't be a World Series loss hangover, but hopefully a motivator to get back there. I'm going to leave the Dodgers out of all predictions. They're completely unfair. So in the NL, we've talked about them a bunch, but I think the Mets, I think they're building a great team. I know a bunch of Met fans. I got to go to Citi Field last year. I love what the farm flexibility, but no pressure on those guys to actually contribute. I love what that gives, a GM. They've shown that they will go for it. So I think they're in a great spot besides having to play the Dodgers in the playoffs most likely. So I like Mets versus Blue Jays, and I'll pick the Blue Jays probably. I don't want to, but I think I'll pick the Blue Jays. I think I love their rotation. I love their additions from big pieces to smaller pieces. And I like that World Series experience. They really were two pitches away. So
Yeah.
just right there. But it'll probably be the Dodgers.
Yeah, that's the thing. I'm probably gonna have a cop out answer here, but I'm gonna go with the Dodgers. Seems like every year I'm picking them, and I've been right the last couple of years, and I think
There
a
you go.
lot of people
You
have
got a
picked them.
non-Dodgers pick? Yeah. I back.
My non-Dodgers pick, I'd probably say the Mets, if I was
Yeah.
picking. Which right now I'm gonna say Dodgers versus. I think the Mariners, they're not a surprise pick. A lot of people would have them coming out of the AL, and it would make sense. I like the Tigers, honestly, to surprise some people. I
Mhm.
just don't know if they have enough hitting in that lineup to maybe make a run to the ALCS and to get to the World Series. They do have the pitching for sure to do that, but I just don't know if they have the hitting. Maybe they end up making a move, and maybe things would change in that regard. But I like what the Mets have. So I guess Mets versus Dodgers in the NLCS would be my guess as of now, my prediction. For the sake of not having the Dodgers be the team, which they would be my team, as I said, I think it'd be Dodgers versus. I want to say the Mariners, but that's another surprise. That's another pick a lot of people would take. And that's fine, I guess. At the end of the day, that could end up very well being the matchup. Uh, and I like the Orioles. I just don't know if they have enough to get to the World Series, but I think they're a playoff team, and I think they'll surprise some people. Um, I'm gonna go with. And the Blue Jays were so close. You're right, honestly. And even though I'm not rooting for them, it'd be good redemption on their end of making it back and getting things right this time, since last year was just a devastating way to lose. And if I was a fan of the Blue Jays, I'd be heartbroken. You were, an inch away from winning the World Series, just a kind of a cleat away from winning the World Series. So it's tough. I'm going to go Dodgers. If I'm picking, what I would say, I'm going to go Dodgers versus Mariners, and I'm going to go Dodgers in six. Um, and then if I'm have to go someone that's other than the Dodgers, it'd be the Mets. And I think if the Mets make it to the World Series, I think they win. I think they have a really talented team. If they get past the Dodgers, I like them winning the World Series. I just don't know if I could pick the Orioles making it there as much as I'd like to see them bounce back. And even though they're in our division, I like a lot of the young players. Trevor Rogers being one of the guys that I think is one of the most underrated players in the league. I'd like to see them. Obviously, I'd like to see the Red Sox. I try to be a little bit unbiased with the pick. With the way the Red Sox currently stand, I don't know if they are a World Series team necessarily. They're a playoff team, but I don't know if they, make it to the World Series. They add a power bat that was a legitimate threat. They can give you like 30, 35 home runs, which that's what everybody would want. I think maybe my expectation would change a little bit, but I think they could be an ALCS team, the Red Sox this year. What do you think is the ceiling for the Red Sox playoffs wise? Obviously, we want to win the World Series, but do you see them getting there potentially?
I mean, I think that pitching can take you anywhere. That can take you as far as you want, and you got a good enough lineup where enough guys hot at the right time, and that's not like a lot to ask, but that team we have, like plenty of those guys get when they get hot are some of the best hitters in baseball. So I think we have World Series potential, especially in baseball. It's like so few games in the playoffs. Once you're there, anyone can make it happen, and we have the pitching where we can win with bad lineup performances, which we've done and like we've won that way in the past when we're getting to the playoffs. We win 3-2. So I'd love to see the lineup improve. I just think the rotation can make us hopefully we have a good enough record near the deadline that we go for a power bat or at least a big pickup, even if it's a veteran pickup. Like I'd love to see that. And with that, I think that's a World Series team.
Yeah, I'm completely with you on that. I think we're just that one kind of missing link away. And if you're that one missing link away, it's a great place to be because okay, we have a really good core of what we have right now. We don't got to mix up things too much and give up too much to go get somebody. If we really only need one guy, some teams need three or four pieces of the deadline. We might not need that. We might only need one. We'll see where we're at the deadline. There could be injuries, and maybe we'll be completely wrong and they need like four guys. Who knows? But the way they stand right now, I think they're only kind of one kind of piece away. I think it's a thing that they can figure out, over the course of the season. And maybe, I don't, who knows? Maybe Casas comes back healthy mid-season, ends up being a big power threat that the Red Sox need. Who knows, right? Like we don't know how the season will play out. But I think they have World Series potential. I just wasn't going to put them my prediction as of right now, since I feel like there are a couple teams that are better than us in the AL. I think we're better than the Tigers, to be honest, though. I just had them in there because I like their rotation. I think we're a better team than them. I think the Mariners and the Orioles, Blue Jays. I don't know. I feel like all of them could be better than us in some regards. But with that being said, like you said, it's baseball. Anything can happen. It's 162 games. So I could see us being better than those teams, when August and September rolls around and October baseball rolls around. And we'll see. I do want to ask you one more question before we get to the awards predictions. We did talk about the Dodgers, obviously, in depth. Do you feel like they're ruining baseball with their spending habits?
No, I think the players maybe going there after they beat you is very Kevin Durant-ish. So that is possible. Like those players are ruining it. But like we said with Bregman, they're going wherever offers them the most money. I think there's about 10 teams minimum that just Dodgers offer contracts more than their payroll.
Mhm.
Why wouldn't, if you're allowed to do it, why wouldn't you? I think they're exposing a hole that was a long time coming with if this is your setup with billionaire owners, this is what you're going to get. They need to put the rules in place to stop it. So I can't blame them for going, it's working, They're
Mhm.
not you can't blame the owner. I that's what I would do. If I had unlimited money and yeah, you gave me a baseball team, I'd use it all in the baseball team. He's putting it into women's hockey as well, though, so that's good too.
That's valid.
Yeah.
No, you're right. Absolutely. Mark Walter, though, the owner of the Dodgers, he's very much committed to winning. And I think a lot of people don't give the Dodgers respect, which they do sign a lot of big free agents, and I get that. There's another side of it where the players are choosing them, right? Like Blake Snell chose to go to the Dodgers in free agency. Shohei Ohtani chose to go to the Dodgers in free agency. Freddie Freeman, I know he kind of got screwed by his agent with not letting him know the last contract that the Atlanta Braves offered. But in reality, he did choose to go to the Dodgers without knowing what that last offer was from Atlanta. At least that's what
And
we're
that's
for.
probably some PR nonsense as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
Saving face with Atlanta. Yeah.
Yes, that's probably definitely part of it, I'm sure. Very valid point by you. But a lot of players are choosing them. Edwin Diaz chose them. Kyle Tucker chose them. Mookie Betts didn't necessarily choose the Dodgers. The Red Sox traded him there, but the Red Sox knew they could.
Last now.
Glass now, exactly. Another great point. Glass now and Betts were both traded there, right? So it's like those are two situations there of teams giving up on those players and not wanting to give those guys extensions and the contracts that they want, and the Dodgers are willing to do that, and they're taking the risk, and it's worked out at some points where the Dodgers have made some big time moves, and some have backfired on them, right? Like Trevor Bauer's a signing they had, and obviously that fell apart very quickly. Max Scherzer they traded for the deadline with the trade with Trey Turner. I mean, both those players are good players for them. They didn't get the World Series ring that they wanted with those guys. And lo and behold, what did they do? They just went and got the next best player that they could get in free agency or via trade in the next offseason, in the next offseason after that, and the next offseason after that. Like, I can't blame them. Like, there's no rules against spending. Everyone's against them for that matter. But a lot of teams could be doing this. And I know some teams might not have the ability to defer as much money that they do. And I get that. But at the end of the day, there's a lot more teams. Every team in baseball could spend more money than they're currently spending. And I can't fault the Dodgers for something where there aren't rules, which we'll see what the next CBA holds. But there aren't rules against it right now. And also an underrated thing with the Dodgers that we already mentioned, they develop talent so well and they're drafting well. And so it's putting them in the position to go trade for those guys and then give them extensions. So you can't fault them for that. Do you expect obviously there to be a lockout? It seems like everybody just expects that after the season's over with.
Yep, I'd say it's a foregone conclusion. And a quick point that you brought up with the Dodgers, the Turner and Scherzer trade. One, they fleeced the Nats, but two, I spoke with our friend Sean Shepard, who's a
Yep.
Dodgers fan, yesterday about that, and it was strategic non-re-signing to get them under the tax to bring in Ohtani the next year. So it was every time you think the Dodgers messed something up, no. They had that plan well in advance, so they knew what they were doing. But I think a CBA a lockout is so guaranteed. You see the MLB players posting about why a salary cap is bad, and I'm not saying there should be a salary cap. They're just not offering a good argument. Like Brent Rooker posted about yesterday. I didn't even know what he was trying to say. And I think the big players are almost a little more concerned about their max contracts, the difference between 60 million and 90 million being capped, as opposed to the minor league players making $45,000 a year, or the minimum guys being under team control till they're 35 if you don't make the MLB as a teenager. We don't need, I'm not an MLB player, so maybe I don't have a say, but it seems they're more interested in Juan Soto getting the most possible money in a year than they are of the well-being of all the players in the league or everyone that's privileged enough to get to the MLB. Like Juan Soto is gonna generational wealth, never think about money again, regardless of salary cap, no
Yeah.
matter what. There's no cap that can stop that. But the 12th guy on a team, maybe not. He might only have 2 years in the MLB, the rest of his life in the minors, and doesn't actually make any special money, even though there was billions of dollars being tossed around. So yeah, I think the MLB players seem very interested in protecting the maximum contracts. The owners aren't going to want a floor because there's maybe the bigger owners will, but why would they want the added competition? And why would the guys who aren't spending want to keep spending? But you
Mhm.
got to close that money gap because paying the better players and all players are going to go to where the money is, and everyone knows who the best players are. So
Mhm.
the guys with the most money can get the best players.
Mhm.
It's you got to close that gap. 700 or whatever it is, like $600 million gap between your highest payroll and your lowest. It's like 300 or something. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
That's really bad. You got guys making more in one year than a whole team makes. So
Yeah.
I think that's the biggest thing they need to fix. They need to find a way to close that gap. I don't know if a cap does that, but a floor can definitely help.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you probably need a fixed deferred money somehow. I don't know how Otani's able to get paid 600 million in one year, but you got to change that. You definitely need to change that.
Yeah, the 680 million deferred to 700 is crazy. But you brought some elite insight there, though. You did. You made a lot of great points of them figuring out this next CBA, which I know a lot of the time it's about what these current players are getting and the stars are getting. They don't want a salary cap because of that. But at the same time, it's about setting the next generation of baseball players up. The guys that are in the minor leagues now, guys that are in high school now that'll be drafted in 2 or 3 years, figuring out how much money they're going to be making. The minor league guys for the next decade. Like there's so much that will go into the next CBA with figuring things out for not just the current players, but players to come after them. That's why I'm with you on that. I wish they were a little bit more open-minded to not just trying to help the current stars. You want to help the guys that are, which, like you said, we're not in the major leagues, which maybe our viewpoint would be different if we were playing in the majors, but you want to help the next generation of players with this CBA. And who knows, hopefully this is the last lockout, which I think it's kind of a guarantee, like you said. Hopefully this is the last lockout we have, but that's just not the reality of things. Things always change. Look at college athletics, things are changing every day in college athletics, just like in the professional sports landscape. So things will change, and maybe there will be another lockout down the line, but hopefully they get things right with this one. Deferred money, I think there should be a cap on that, like where you have to have 80% of total money being paid out on the lifetime of a contract. So if it's a 10-year deal, you need 80% of Shohei's $700 million being paid out over that 10-year deal. And then 20% of it, if you're sending that down the line, it's not that crazy. And maybe they'll have to say, okay, from now on, deferred money can't be sent out down the line because there's no way you're going to backtrack and say Shohei's deal is now in current day he's getting paid, the 70 million a year. That's just not going to happen. So it'd have to be something that set a precedent for years down the line. And one of the point you made about what Shep said, I didn't even think about that, but an excellent point by Shep, and I'm happy you brought that up. Didn't think about that being a CBT thing where they were trying to, play a little bit chess and not checkers down the line. But I'm with you on that. We'll see how things go. But like you said, it's probably a guarantee a lockout happens. And now we can transition. I don't want to take up too much more of your time. This has been an excellent episode. We're almost
Awesome.
2 hours in now. So this is quite an episode. I can't wait till we get Dan Kelley on here, Nevin, Jackson, get all their insight as well on here with me and you down the line. That'll be a special episode. But this episode right here is definitely a goated one. I'm here with obviously a great friend of mine, a cousin of mine, my QB1. So this has been special. So I don't want to take up much more of your time, as I said, but I'd love to hear your award predictions for the MLB this season. Whether you want to do Rookie of the Year, Cy Young, MVP, you can take the floor and take your picks on it.
Now we'll start and we'll go from, Rookie of the Year, Cy Young to MVP. I want to hear yours as well for
Yeah.
sure. For AL Rookie of the Year, I'm between Jensen, Carter Jensen for the Royals, and Okamoto. I've brought him up a bunch of times, but I think they'd give it to, I don't know if they'd give it to a Japanese player. He might be Korean actually, but I think Carter Jensen, he looked really good in his MLB debut last year. I think he's just a great baseball player. He's a catcher as well. So I like Carter Jensen, not much off the board. That's for AL Rookie of the Year. NL, go fairly basic pick, and I'd say JJ Weatherholt with the Cardinals. He's going to get everyday playing time. I think he was ready to go for the MLB last year, but he's a well-rounded player. He's got 162 games laid out in front of him because that Cardinals team stinks. So I like those two for my Rookie of the Year, Jensen and Weatherholt, but I could see Okamoto as well. And Griffin had a bad spring actually, but if he's like 80, 60% of the player people are calling him, he'll win Rookie of the Year.
Yeah, and if he's playing against the Sox, which he hit a couple home runs against us, if I remember right, Griffin, in a preseason game this year, I think.
Yeah, he looked great that game. He struggled the rest. He didn't bat amazing, but I guess McGonigal was one of the stars of spring training as so he's obviously in it. But I wanted to go a little off the board at least, not go McGonigal, Griffin as my top two.
Yeah, that's valid. Very, very valid point. I think with your AL pick, Okamoto, the Japanese outfielder that the Blue Jays just signed, and that was a cheap deal. I think it was like 4 years, like 60 million or something, which if he ends up having the production that they're hoping, that'll be one of the better contracts in baseball, just like Shohei's was when he, jumped from Japan to play for the Angels, at the time. So we'll see. I think Okamoto is a good pick. I went with, this is a biased pick, and I know it is, and he's not going to be in the Red Sox rotation to start the year. But Connolly early, in the event he's in the Red Sox rotation, I think he's the AL Cy Young winner. I mean, AL Rookie of the Year winner, not Cy Young. At least yet. At least yet. I think
It could
down the line,
be, could be.
could be. You never know down the line. But he's my pick for AL Rookie of the Year if he plays. Right now, it seems like he's going to be outside looking in, and who knows when he gets up to the major league team if he starts out in AAA. So I went with another guy, and this is another player that probably won't even be on the Guardians roster, just like early might not be in the Sox roster start the year. Travis Bazzana on the Guardians. I like him a lot. He has 2020 potential, 20 home runs he can give you potential, which if he does that as a rookie, probably could be Rookie of the Year. But your expectations for him, do you think he starts the year in AAA, Bazzana?
I think so. I think all those teams that can't overspend, they really try and maximize those prospect years they can get. So I think he will start the year AAA, but that never stopped anyone from winning Rookie of the Year. You do what Nick Kurtz did You can
Yeah.
win Rookie of the Year in 60 games. So
That's valid. I'm looking at more from the perspective of like Okamoto is going to get, right? Okay, 100, 150 games of experience.
exactly.
Bazana might only get like 60, maybe 80 potentially if he gets up, midway through the season. We'll see though. But in the National League Rookie of the Year, I went with Bubba Chandler, a guy I already mentioned, a guy that I think has a lot of potential to be, a great pitcher, especially in that rotation where you could be with Paul Skeens. You obviously mentioned Griffin being another young player on that team. Like that team is a nice young core of guys, I feel like. So I went with Chandler as my Rookie of the Year. And now we can jump over to MVP if you'd like.
We'll go Cy Young first if you
Cy
want.
Young.
We can do it
Yeah,
quick.
let's do Cy Young. Honestly, that's a good way to go. And then we'll do MVP last. Let's do it.
All right, I'll give four guys and I'll try and pick one for the AL. I like Wu and Gilbert for Seattle. And honestly, like Bryce Miller, Kirby, geez, anyone from Seattle can win Cy Young, but Wu and Gilbert. Then Drew Rasmussen, if he is healthy and they keep him off an innings limit, is like a sub 2 ERA in like 200 Ks guy, but they're going to limit his innings. But if they don't, because he's like 30 something, he genuinely could win Cy Young. And then Ranger Suarez, if the voters go old school, he could lead the AL in wins, and they're just going to give him a Rick Porcello type of Cy Young, where he's not dominant, but he just wins games and keeps the ERA consistent. But yeah, I probably like Wu or Gilbert, and I'll say Brian. I'll say Logan Gilbert. He's an absolute monster for the AL. NL, I like Peralta or Luzardo, Jesus Luzardo. I'll say Peralta. I'll just say the Mets have like a magic season, and Peralta gets it done.
Yeah, that's a great pick. I think even with the AL ones you mentioned, like the Mariners are so good and they're so deep, like you could see any of those guys winning. And I'd be with you on that. Rasmussen's definitely really good. He's underrated. I don't think people talk about him enough. And maybe it's because he's on Tampa Bay, right? So they don't really get as much love, attention wise, especially, which besides MLB Network, ESPN really never talks baseball, but even when they do, it'll never be talking about the Rays, right? So there are guys like that that are under the radar that don't get talked about enough. In MLB Network, we'll talk about those guys, but not really enough. It seems like when teams are talked about, it's always just the Yankees, the Dodgers, the Red Sox, the Mets, which I get it, big market teams. But I think under the radar, Rasmussen's definitely up there. My AL Cy Young winner is Garrett Crochet, which I think that's a little bit of a cop out, but he was right there with Scooble, led the American League or led the entire league in strikeouts last year. AL and NL doesn't matter. Led the MLB in strikeouts. Really good player, really consistent the last year for the Red Sox. Um, and he's been consistent, honestly, the last couple seasons, dating back from Chicago and his time now with the Red Sox. I know he had injury history when he first got to Boston. That was my concern, was he really only had 1 year of MLB, starting experience. And I remember texting Jackson, your cousin, about it. And I remember saying to Jackson, like, hey, I'm a little bit worried because he didn't really have as much MLB like starting experience because he had an injury. And I thought that was a worry. He completely exceeded my expectations and more. I was worried at the time about trading Brady Montgomery. He's a prospect that I'm still high on. I know he hasn't really put it all together yet in the minors. I like Brady Montgomery a lot. But Crochet, I think, is honestly underrated is not the word because he does get a lot of hype. But I think Scuba was overshadowing his excellence last year, and understandably so. He was excellent last year, Scuba, and he's been great the last 3 years, really. Crochet is my AL Cy Young winner. And then NL, it's tough. I went Blake Snell if he's healthy. With that being said, there's a lot of guys get mentioned in the NL, and I wouldn't be shocked. One under the radar guy I went if he's healthy, and this is tough. And I was going to go his teammate who's going to be missing some of the season, Hunter Green, Chase Burns. If he's healthy, he has Cy Young potential, has a lot of potential to get 8, 10, 12 strikeouts any given start. Was inconsistent a little bit last year. Maybe it's because he's young and didn't really have as much of an opportunity to mess up. I know when he played the Red Sox last year, the Red Sox put up I think 7 or 8 runs in the first inning against him, and then he was out of the game. I think being in that Reds rotation helps and hurts. You're surrounded by a lot of guys who can chew innings and can be successful pitchers around you. But at the same time, being the prospect he was, they're probably expecting him to be higher than Lodolo, and they have another pitcher as well, Andrew something. They have another pitcher.
Abbott, I think.
Abbott, yes. Abbott was really good last year. Yes, exactly. But they're expecting him to be better than those guys, Lodolo and Abbott probably, and Green obviously being hurt. I think they're expecting a lot from him this year, which, like I said, can help and hurt being surrounded by those guys. But I think Burns under the radar, dark horse for Cy Young.
Yeah, I like that a lot. Chase Burns is a monster. If he's not this year, it's in the future, in his future. I get scared that if they have a down year, they're gonna put him on an innings limit, shut him down. He could be in the midst of a Cy Young season. They're so ridiculous with shutting down pitchers. I could be wrong. I don't know the sports science, but like you saw it with guys like Strasburg and a bunch of these guys, like it doesn't even work. It didn't preserve Strasburg's career. I don't know. Let him pitch. Just let him pitch.
I'm with you
Love
on that.
seeing them pitch. You don't. Chase Burns is like one of the most overpowering pitchers in the MLB. Strikeouts monster and gonna limit him. It bothers me.
I'm
But
completely with you.
but I love that pick, and I would have loved a Hunter Green pick as well. It's unfortunate he's already hurt. Same with Snell. Snell's a
Yeah.
beast.
That was great, but injury's been a problem for him too, right? So
Yeah.
it's tough. But I like Snell just because you're gonna be the third guy in that rotation. The expectations won't be that high, but you can still have as many wins as any guy around you, and maybe even have more strikeouts than the rest of the guys around you. So we'll see with him, but I went with him there. And now for MVP, which I think is kind of open in each league. I think Shohei and Judge, a lot of people will pick, but there's a lot of guys that could win besides those two. But it's fine if you pick one of those two because they're great players, and it's understandable picking one of them.
Yep. I think the AL is a little more open. Shohei, if he plays the whole season, just it's gonna be impossible to pass him almost. But I'll go away from those two. Obviously, I like Bobby Witt a lot, but for AL, I'll go with J-Rod. I'll go Julio Rodriguez. I feel like he's just been waiting for a monster breakout. He's been the same player since he got into the league, and everyone seems like they're just waiting for this huge breakout, and it hasn't come just yet. But like with the Mariners' expectations and him just he's still so young, like this could be the year. He is an awesome baseball player. He's awesome to watch. I like J-Rod this year for the AL. And also very sleeper pick for MVP, not to be good, but Ben Rice. If Judge isn't winning MVP, if you're not picking Judge, it means he probably got hurt. If Ben Rice steps in as that new absolute slugger for the Yankees, he could hit like 40 dingers, but I still don't think he'd win MVP. I think I know who your pick is, but I'll let you say him. Um,
Yeah.
and for you look at the list and it really just feels like Shohei. I'll say either Ellie, Pete Crow Armstrong didn't look great at the end of last year, so I want to say him for a fun pick, but I really think it's Ellie and maybe Devers. I love Devers to have a revenge season and just absolutely destroy the ball this year. I think that would be hilarious and awesome, but I'll say Ellie. He's such a beast.
I like that. I like that pick a lot. Actually, all of your picks. Julio Rodriguez, you're absolutely right. Where he has so much potential, he hasn't even reached, I think, his peak yet, and he got
Just
paid. You
waiting
know,
for it.
exactly, and he got paid as rookie. He got his extension and got a new contract, and it was understandable because of his potential. It was there, and we'll see what he looks like this season. But I love that pick there, and I hope he does have a great year, honestly. And then. As your NL picks, I would love to see Ellie De La Cruz do that and have an MVP season. I'd want to see the Reds get back to being like competitive and be relevant year in and year out, which for a lot of our lives have struggled, especially most of the time. They've had a couple good years, like the pandemic had a good year. I think even last year showed, potential in what they can be. I'd love to see De La Cruz do that this year. My AL pick, you already know it kind of. I've already talked about him now enough, but Nick Hurts, I think he has a big time season. I'm going to go with him as my AL MVP. NL's tough. Ellie was going to be my guy, but then last second before the episode, I switched it, and I don't think it's necessarily a cop out, but it kind of is because it's a Dodger, and you could pick any of these guys in that lineup, just like with the Mariners rotation. You wouldn't be shocked if any of them win the Cy Young, just like with the Dodgers lineup. If it's Shohei, if it's Freddie Freeman, I know Mookie had a down year, but you never know with him. I went with Kyle Tucker. I think he has a big time season, which he's already had a great MLB career, so it's not going to surprise anyone if he has, a 30-30 season. But he hasn't had a 30-30 season yet, I don't think, in his career. If I remember correctly, I might be wrong on that. It's either 30-30 or 40-40, but I don't think he's had a 30-30. I think that's
At
correct.
29-30 in 2023, it looks like.
Okay, so there you go. Perfect. Getting the research done. I appreciate that. So yes, I think this is the year he's a 30-30 season. I think he has around, I think he maximizes home run potential as well. I think he gets around 40 home runs this season. And that's because you're not going to be able to pitch around him. And even in Chicago, they weren't necessarily pitching around him, but now you can't do that on the Dodgers with the guys they have. And so Maybe they do end up walking Shohei to try to get to him, and now there's an extra guy in front of him that he could try to hit in. Who knows? I don't think you can pitch around any of those guys in that lineup because the next guy coming up is great. So I think that just helps his case. But I think Ellie would be my second pick. I want to see Ellie win it. I went with Tucker though as my MVP pick there, and we'll see. What were your thoughts on Kurtz and Tucker? I know you expected me to probably go Nick Kurtz.
No, Kurt's an awesome pick. I mean, if he just replicated what he did last year in a full season with the same numbers, it would be an awesome season. So you'd even do a little bit of projecting. Now he's got a year under his belt. He could absolutely smash the ball. The only thing, sometimes a second year player, like the pitchers get some film on them and they have that little slump while they then have to readjust. And a lot of the MLB players always talk about that like back and forth between they make the adjustment and the pitchers do. But he's like a special hitter, so there's no doubt he would adjust to anything. So I'm not sure there's going to be any adjustments around him. I actually like the Tucker pick a lot because he's similar to J-Rod. Like he's had those monster seasons, but you can feel like there's something even like bigger under there, like a year where he's getting lucky on balls falling in, or like an extra power year, like Bellinger sometimes pulls out. Like you can definitely see an MVP under there, and going to the Dodgers hides it. I think he'd be a bigger favorite actually elsewhere, even though his numbers might balloon with the Dodgers, the RBI numbers. One last thing I'd throw in for MVP is you could have Skeens. Like if they let him play the full innings amount, like you're talking about a guy who pitches to like a 1.5 ERA with 300 strikeouts if they let him go for it. So he's an animal. I'd love to see him win MVP. That would be super cool. But
Yeah.
probably
I'm with
Shohei
you.
Judge. Shohei Judge probably
Joey
again.
Judge probably had to being it for the sake of having a discussion.
Exact. You gotta
I
have
am with
a
you talking
close
these under
discussion
under the radar guys that don't get the respect, and it's not necessarily they don't get the respect because a lot of these guys do get talked about a lot. Like Kyle Tucker definitely gets talked
about
about
the
a lot.
voting respect, you know.
You know what I mean? But it's with the voting completely. I'm with you on that. And I think with Tucker, he's most home runs he's had in a season is 30. I think he has the potential to go for 40. I think 40 stolen base would be a lot for him, but I think he has potential for 40 home runs. That would be a crazy season, but I think he has that potential. So I think he has a monster year and goes for like 35. 40 home runs is a lot. I think he have 35 home runs. He's going to have a chance at breaking his all-time, his all-time RBIs in a single season was 112. He's going to have 120 plus, I think, this season. So I think
Got
he's
the
a big,
Dodgers coaching staff now too, so
yeah. He's going to obviously improve in certain situations with them. And one thing you mentioned about Skeens that I want to say, you're absolutely right. If the Pirates take a step up too, like we talked about this season, that we expect them to both be better, which being better might be, like I said, from fifth place to fourth place in division, third place, and that's fine because it's improvement. I am with you. I think he could be a potential MVP candidate. If he's putting up 1.4 ERA numbers, which he's been consistently right around two, right? The last
yeah,
couple seasons.
198, something like that. He's
Yeah. It's like
joking.
he should be in that conversation, but I know they're not going to ever give it to a guy that has a team in last place, and I get that. It's like Kawhi Leonard this year, which now the Clippers lost three in a row. So I guess my dreams of them potentially making a run as a play-in team, which will still be in the play-in, but that will be a 9 or a 10 maybe. But Kawhi Leonard having the Clippers go from 6-21 to at one point 34-32, putting up 29 points a game. I was like, he should be in the MVP conversation, but they're never going to give that to somebody that is a play-in team, just like with Skeens. If he's missing the playoffs, they're not going to give them the MVP votes, which I get that, and that completely makes sense, which we'll see. But one last thing I want to ask you before I let you go. I know I've held you up for 2 hours, so I don't hold you up too much
I
longer.
love
But
it.
this has been awesome. We've covered so
This
much
is so
baseball,
good.
under the radar teams, under the radar players, the Red Sox entire rotation, some of their prospects, and then covering now award predictions and World Series predictions and the next potential CBA and the lockout. Like this has been an in-depth, excellent, exceptional episode. So thank you so much. One thing we talked about before we got on air was about you graduating from Northeastern. I mentioned earlier in the episode right away, you graduated twice, 2 degrees from Northeastern, an excellent school. Now you're a double Husky. What was it like graduating at Fenway Park? And then you could talk about an experience you had there when you were on the field.
That was really special. It was super cool going to games at Fenway my whole life, as everyone listening and Joey has been. I'd probably been on the field once or twice for a kids run the bases and winning a little league championship, but getting to graduate out there and the whole ceremony taking place in the outfield and seeing your family and everyone else's families sitting in the seats looking at you on the field was really special. And Me and a couple of my buddies brought our gloves out and a ball. We snuck them in under the gowns. We got to play some catch out in left field right in front of the monster before they shut us down super quickly. But yeah, it was pretty awesome. No drops from any of us. It was short game of catch, but no errors were made. So the Red Sox should take some notes, or they should have taken notes because it was an error-filled season that followed our graduation. Uh, but that was a special experience. I love Fenway Park. I'm so excited to get back out there. I'll be at game two for the home games. So I'm excited.
It's amazing. Well, I'm happy you shared that experience because I never knew about which I knew you threw the ball around. I didn't know because I saw the picture of you with the glove. I didn't know they yelled at you and stuff about that, which honestly it makes sense, I guess. I just didn't
Yeah.
think that you got shut down, but it makes sense. I love that you and your buddies got a couple throws in and you could say you threw the ball around at Fenway Park on graduation day, which graduating at Fenway on its own, graduating college on its own, huge milestone, doing it at Fenway, walking there, very special.
I'll have
Being
to
able
give
to
a shout
throw
out to my mom. She gave me the idea. I can't let that go under the radar. My mom gave me the idea. So
It's a great idea. Honestly,
it
it's a once
was.
in a lifetime
It
thing.
was.
Just graduating there and then also throwing the ball around with your friends. It's a memory you'll have forever. So, I appreciate you, bringing that up. And I don't want to take up much more of your time, as I said. So I'll let you go and enjoy the rest of your Saturday afternoon. But Finn, thank you so much for your time. An absolute pleasure, my friend. You brought excellent insight. So thank you again for your time. Always much appreciated.
Joey, this was awesome. Thank you for letting me ramble for 2 hours about baseball. Pepper never wants to hear any of it, so I was really happy to have someone to get it out to. I hope anyone listening this long had a good time. Thank you so much. This is super awesome. I love watching all your videos. I don't know if I'll be watching my own voice back, but this was great.
This was a legendary episode, truly. And this is like episode probably like 415 just about now. And this is one of the best episodes in depth wise baseball, probably the best I've had. I don't think I've talked this long with somebody about baseball. So definitely a special episode. Thank you so much again. And looking forward to having you on again when we get more of the family on sometime again in the future.
Awesome.